Yo, Atlas speaking, and welcome to part 2 of What If I Was Reborn into One Punch Man as a low-ranked hero with dual Kamui. Let the tale begin. Chapter 26, Taking It Too Far. What did you just say? Shinji didn't let it slide, immediately pressing the question. And, nothing at all, Lily stammered, clearly flustered. Right then, all she wanted was to turn around and disappear. She had come alone, hoping to quietly gather intel on Shinji, but of all places, she'd run into the guy himself right here at Z-Branch. With no one from the Blizzard group to back her up, she wasn't about to put on any tough act. At the moment, Shinji sat comfortably at 4th place in B class. Lily, on the other hand, was buried way down at 75th. But I'm pretty sure I just heard you asking someone about me, no? Shinji smiled, though it carried a touch too much sweetness. Well, since I'm standing right here, if you've got something to ask, go ahead. Lily froze. She wanted to deny it out of instinct, but paused. What if he was actually a decent guy? Maybe even approachable? His smile threw her off. It wasn't outright threatening, just oddly playful, with a flicker of something darker beneath. She read it the wrong way and convinced herself he was being friendly. Driven by the urge to impress Lady Fubuki, Lily took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and met Shinji's eyes. So you're the one they call Kamui, B-class rank 4, right? Have you heard of the Blizzard group? Shinji, seeing her shift from nervous to bold, gave a simple reply. Sure have. I figured you hadn't. Well, let me explain it to you proper, huh? She blinked, mid-sentence, suddenly realizing what he'd just said. Wait a minute, you've heard of the Blizzard group? Lily stared in disbelief. She'd assumed Shinji was a recent addition to B-class who hadn't yet gotten the memo on how things worked, namely, the Blizzard group's dominance. But that one line had completely thrown her. Of course I have. Aside from the Tank Topper Army, it's one of the most infamous hero groups in the association, Shinji replied casually, wearing that same light smile. But, if you know of Lady Fubuki and the Blizzard group, why haven't you paid your respects? Lily frowned, just slightly, her tone growing more serious. You're aware she's B-class rank 1, aren't you? Yeah, I've heard of her, Shinji answered with an easy nod, his voice calm and unbothered. Then why haven't you made the effort to greet Lady Fubuki? That's an established tradition in B-class, Lily said, now sounding more like an enforcer of protocol than a curious onlooker. Under Lady Fubuki's long-standing reign, a custom had developed, an unwritten rule. Every new B-class hero was expected to introduce themselves to her. If they had potential, they'd receive an invitation to join. Refusing wasn't really an option. Those who tried would quickly learn that crossing the Blizzard group had consequences. Oh, I know the rule. Just found it annoying, so I didn't bother, Shinji replied bluntly. You, Lily's expression turned more serious, her brows knitting as she stared at him. You should go greet her before she gets mad. Lady Fubuki already has something she wants to say to you. No. Shinji didn't even hesitate. He shook his head like it was the most obvious answer in the world. Why not? Aren't you afraid of angering her? Lily pressed, her tone sharpening. Because it's annoying. If she really wants to talk, she can come to me. I don't mind saying hello, Shinji replied coolly, completely unfazed. Like Saitama, he had zero tolerance for pointless customs or power plays. Lily frowned, clearly not expecting that level of defiance. You do realize disrespecting Lady Fubuki will cost you, right? That counts as disrespect? Shinji raised an eyebrow, genuinely baffled. I really don't get you guys. It's like I'm talking to some young master goon in a shitty wuxia novel. Anyway, didn't you just say she has something she wants to tell me? You could just say it now. I'm not telling you unless you go greet her in person, Lily huffed, crossing her arms and turning her face away like a kid throwing a tantrum. Shinji stared at her for a second, almost amused. She was acting like he was dying to know what Fubuki had to say, when in reality, he was already pretty sure what it was about. It didn't take a genius to guess. He'd just climbed up to B-class rank 4, naturally, Fubuki would want to recruit him. It was her thing. She had a reputation for roping in any B-class hero with potential, folding them neatly into the Blizzard group. Honestly, Shinji couldn't think of any other reason she'd be interested in him. They'd never even met. If you're not gonna say, that's fine. If there's nothing else, I'll be on my way, he said casually and turned to leave. But then Lily called out behind him. Wait a minute. He stopped, sighing slightly as he turned his head. What is it now? One last question, where do you live? She asked it with a completely serious face, like it was a totally normal question. A giant question mark practically floated above Shinji's head. But it didn't take him long to figure it out. The Blizzard group was clearly fishing for intel. If they knew where he lived, they could show up any time, whether it was to pressure him into joining or, if things went sideways, to retaliate. You're asking for someone's home address right off the bat? You're not some kind of stalker, are you? Shinji raised an eyebrow, teasing her without holding back. The word stalker hit Lily like a truck. For someone like her, pure and a little sheltered, it packed a punch. She froze, her mouth opening and closing before her face turned red. I am not, she stammered, clearly rattled. Then why do you want to know where I live? Shinji asked, his tone casual but persistent. Lily clammed up, refusing to say another word. Why ask so much then? Just give me a straight answer. There was no way she could admit the truth that the Blizzard group was collecting his info in case they decided to follow up later. That won't do. If you're not explaining, I'm not telling. For all I know, you really are a stalker. Shinji grinned again, this time even more deliberately. I told you I'm not a stalker. Lily yelled, her face burning from embarrassment. All right. That's enough. I'm heading out. Shinji waved her off like she was yesterday's news and turned to leave. Wait! Answer my question first. But no matter how loud Lily got, Shinji didn't even slow down. He just kept walking farther and farther away. Seeing him disappear down the street, Lily started to panic. She hadn't expected things to spiral this fast. The last thing she wanted was to return empty-handed. Before she realized what she was doing, her legs took off on their own, and she chased after him. Even so, she stayed cautious, doing her best to keep some distance and not be noticed. Which was kind of funny, considering what that made her now. A stalker. Maybe because Shinji had seemed so laid back earlier, she forgot just how far ahead of her he was in both rank and ability. And now, here she was, tailing him through the streets like some amateur spy. Not that Shinji hadn't noticed. In fact, he'd picked up on her the moment she started following. He had originally planned to just teleport home and be done with it, but now he was curious. Amused, even. Since Fubuki had sent such a loyal little pawn after him, why not mess with her a bit? From then on, his route became a maze. He cut corners, doubled back, and wandered aimlessly with zero intention of going home. The unpredictability made it hard for Lily to keep up. She'd turn one way only to find him turning the opposite. She weaved through streets, alleys, and tight bends, always struggling to stay close. Then, after yet another sharp turn, she looked up. Shinji was gone. Confused, she rushed out from behind a mailbox and darted to the next intersection. Still nothing. Damn it! She stomped her foot, seething with frustration. And just when she thought it couldn't get any worse, she realized. She was completely, utterly lost. Looking around, she found herself surrounded by wild overgrowth, trees, and tall grass. Somehow, she ended up on the rural outskirts of the city. No lights, no landmarks, just nature. Exhausted, she leaned against a nearby tree, gasping for breath. She had been tailing Shinji for what felt like forever, and now it was all for nothing. The fatigue mixed with her growing sense of isolation, and before long, it started eating at her nerves. Lily might have been a professional hero, but she was also one of the youngest female heroes in the entire association. Her mental resilience wasn't exactly top tier, and this situation was pushing her to her limit. And fear always brought out the worst thoughts. What if she wandered out here until she starved? What if she never saw Lady Fubuki again? What if a monster came out of nowhere and devoured her right here? Her chest tightened, and tears began to well up in her eyes. Eventually, she slid down to the base of the tree and curled up, hugging her knees. Completely overwhelmed. Completely alone. Chapter 27, Exchanging Contact Info. Watching from the shadows, Shinji suddenly felt a twinge of guilt. Maybe he had taken the prank too far. He hadn't expected the poor girl to actually start crying. He couldn't bear to watch a girl cry, and with a soft sigh, he appeared in front of Lily in an instant. Lily, who had been sitting with her head down, quietly sobbing, suddenly noticed a pair of shoes appear in front of her. She looked up and saw Shinji. "Come on. I'll take you out of here." Shinji didn't say much more, simply reaching out his hand toward her. Lily blinked, confused and disoriented, her thoughts clearly jumbled. But after a moment of hesitation, she reached out and took his hand. Shinji didn't use Camui or Flying Thunder God. In front of Lily, he simply led her out of the wilderness on foot. Halfway through the walk, Lily used her free hand to wipe away the tears still lingering on her cheeks. She felt a little embarrassed that Shinji had seen her crying. "Did you know I was following you?" she suddenly asked. After all, there would have been no reason for him to come back for her if he hadn't noticed. "Yeah. I noticed right from the start." Shinji nodded honestly. "I figured." With everything that had happened, Lily wasn't really surprised anymore. No wonder he had been taking such a weird, winding path while she tried to follow him. Thanks," she mumbled, a little shy. If he hadn't come back, she really would have been stranded out there with no way back. "No problem. But next time, don't go around following people. What if you get kidnapped and don't even realize it?" Shinji gave her a gentle warning. "I wouldn't just follow anyone. It's only because you wouldn't tell me, so I had no choice." Lily pouted. "No choice, huh? But I'm just a B-class rookie ranked 4th. It's not like I'm that important to the Blizzard group. Why go to all this trouble?" Shinji genuinely didn't understand. No matter how strong he really was, hardly anyone knew his true capabilities. From the outside, he was just B-class rank 4. Sure, it made sense for the Blizzard group to want to recruit him, but Lily acting like she had to go this far felt like a stretch. Lily hesitated for a while, then finally admitted. "That's on me. I wanted to handle this properly for Lady Blizzard. I was hoping she'd praise me." "I see." Shinji was left speechless. Now that he thought about it, it made sense. Yeah, this girl really was Fubuki's little fangirl. She admired her deeply and had even joined the Blizzard group voluntarily. That lotus flower hairpin on her head, yeah, it kind of said everything. "I'm just telling you now, don't bother. I'm not dumb enough to give you guys my home address. That's just asking for the Blizzard group to come knocking and start trouble." Shinji stated bluntly. "It won't be like that. As long as you take the initiative to greet Lady Blizzard and accept her invitation, not only will no one cause you trouble, it'll actually bring you great benefits." Lily quickly shook her head. Accept her invitation? So what she wanted to talk to me about was inviting me to join the Blizzard group, right? Shinji asked casually. Ah. Lily froze, realizing she'd accidentally let it slip. She instinctively covered her mouth, but it was already too late. Since the truth was out, she gave up trying to hide it. "Yes, Lady Blizzard thinks you have a lot of potential, so she's planning to invite you to join the Blizzard group. But she hasn't been able to find you, which is why I came to gather information about you." "I see. Well, I refuse." Shinji turned her down without even pausing. He'd have to be seriously bored to join the Blizzard group. There was nothing in it for him, and worse, he'd have to play second fiddle under someone else's command. That didn't appeal to him at all. "Wait, don't be so quick to reject it. Don't you know how many benefits come with it? Lily rushed to explain. There are many factions in the hero world. It's hard to survive alone. For example, if you want to climb the ranks, rival factions might try to stop you. You do understand that, right? I do. But I still refuse. Shinji's tone left no room for negotiation. Lily grew even more anxious. That's not all. If you join the Blizzard group, Lady Blizzard can guarantee your rise among the top B-class heroes. Otherwise, you'll struggle just to move forward. She wasn't exaggerating. The top B-class ranks were already locked down by the Blizzard group. Anyone who refused to join would find their path to the top completely blocked. Even if you challenged someone at the top, it wouldn't be a simple one-on-one. You'd have to fight the entire Blizzard group. Unless you did something truly outrageous, something that made the Hero Association fast-track you to A-class without having to defeat Fubuki, there was no other way forward. But how many B-class heroes could actually manage that? For most of them, it was a dead end. Got it. Shinji gave a slight nod. At that moment, they arrived at a residential area. This should be far enough, right? I'm heading off. Lily thought he had finally changed his mind. Smiling, she said. Right. If you decide to visit the Blizzard group later, or if you don't know the way, I can take you there. Hold on. I just said I understand, not that I agreed to join. Shinji corrected her immediately. Also, sure, I was the one who took your hand earlier, but are you going to let go now? I kinda need to head home. He looked down at his hand, still tightly held by Lily. Only then did Lily realize she had been holding hands with a guy all this time. She had been so focused on persuading him about the Blizzard group that she hadn't even noticed. Flustered, she let go in a hurry, her face flushing a deep red. Sorry. Wait! Why are you still refusing to join? She quickly snapped back to the main issue. I've explained more than once. It's just too much of a hassle. And I'm used to doing things my own way. Shinji replied casually. If you're really set on this, just don't say I didn't warn you. Lady Blizzard won't go easy on you. Every single person who's refused her invitation has regretted it. At this point, Lily didn't know what else to say. She had already laid it all out for him. All she could do now was make things clear. Think it over. If you change your mind, you can contact me anytime. As she spoke, she pulled out her phone. Seeing this, Shinji asked, Are we exchanging contact info now? Lily's face showed a flicker of awkwardness at the question, and she quickly clarified. Don't get the wrong idea. This is purely so I can reach you if necessary. I absolutely don't have any other intentions. Chapter 28, Blizzard of Hell. Even in Shinji's own country, asking someone of the opposite sex for their contact information was considered a somewhat ambiguous move. It was seen as something that could easily be misunderstood, a gesture loaded with possible intentions. All the more so in this Japan-based world of One Punch Man, where men and women usually didn't exchange contact details so casually. That was precisely why Lily had felt the need to make her intentions explicitly clear to Shinji. No need to worry. I'm not full of myself. Shinji maintained a calm expression as he exchanged contact details with her. Now both of their phones stored each other's numbers. Thanks to those numbers, they could also locate each other's line accounts, which is a local messaging app similar to WeChat. Alright, later. With that, Shinji turned and walked away. Lily also headed toward the subway, planning to go home. Even though she hadn't managed to get his home address, at least she had his contact info now. It wasn't a total loss. As she walked, a sudden thought came to her. She pulled out her phone and searched for Shinji's number online. What came up was a completely blank profile picture, and the display name was simply a dot. Seeing that, Lily checked the number again to confirm it was correct, otherwise, she wouldn't even have been sure it was really his line. Then she tapped the button and sent a friend request. On Shinji's end, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out and saw a message from Line. Though he had registered the app casually some time ago, he hadn't added anyone yet. He didn't expect to actually get a message. Thinking for a moment, he figured it was probably from Lily. Opening the app, he saw it was indeed a friend request from her. Her profile picture was a selfie she had taken with Fubuki. Without any hesitation, Shinji accepted the request. A few seconds later, a message came through. What happened earlier when I cried, you're not allowed to tell anyone. Relax. I'm not that bored. Shinji responded plainly. Good. She followed that with a sticker, then sent nothing more. Shinji put his phone away and instantly teleported back home. Although Vaccine Man was now under Shinji's control, there wasn't enough room in the apartment for both of them. With only one bedroom available, Shinji let him choose one of the vacant apartments on the same floor to stay in. Aside from Shinji's and Saitama's places, every other unit in the building was completely unoccupied. In fact, the entire district was abandoned. Since Saitama had recently become an S-class hero and could now earn rewards for eliminating monsters, he had finally received a decent amount of money. The first thing Saitama did with the money was haul his broken TV to a repair shop in the residential district, get it fixed, and then lug it all the way back home. With that taken care of, he no longer had to borrow Shinji's TV every day just to play games. Still, that didn't stop him from coming over regularly to mooch food, mostly because Shinji's cooking was simply far better than his own. What had changed, however, was that Saitama now had enough cash to bring over more ingredients. So being a pro hero is actually this profitable? He asked with a hint of surprise while eating at Shinji's place. Only the capable heroes make real money. It's a different story for those on the bottom rung, Shinji replied casually. I see. Something about it feels a bit off, but I took the money anyway. At least now I won't have to keep eating your food every day. Saitama spoke thoughtfully, still chewing. A large chunk of that payout had come from the bounty placed on a dragon-level threat, which, in his mind, made things feel a little strange. Logically speaking, the bounty for defeating that kind of monster should have gone to Shinji. Of course, Shinji knew that too. But he didn't mention it at all. He didn't care about money. Whether it was a lot or a little made no difference to him. As long as it was enough to live on, that was more than sufficient. It wasn't as if he treated money like trash or held some noble disdain for wealth. It was just that in the world of One Punch Man, raw power was everything. Money, titles, recognition, none of those mattered in comparison. Besides, living and eating with a friend like Saitama was more fun. Over the next few days, Lily waited, hoping Shinji would reach out and make a decision. But there wasn't a single message. Not even a sign that he'd been online. Lily, have you finished handling the documents I gave you? At that moment, someone stepped into the office. This was the headquarters of the Blizzard Group, located in a tall office building and operated like a legitimate professional organization. All done. I'll give them to you right away, Lady Fubuki. Lily opened a drawer, pulled out the neatly stacked papers, and handed them over. The woman standing before her, with shoulder-length dark green hair, a deep green long dress, and a fur-lined coat, was none other than the number 1 B-class hero, Blizzard of Hell. Her fair skin and striking beauty were complemented by a curvaceous, refined figure that stood in stark contrast to her older sister, Tatsumaki. If Tatsumaki embodied the petite, sharp-tempered lowly type, then Fubuki was the classic mature One-Nisan type. That said, both sisters had equally nasty temperaments. As she accepted the documents, Fubuki paused briefly and glanced at Lily. It looked like she wanted to say something, but after a moment of hesitation, she kept silent and turned to leave the office. The instant she stepped out, she turned to the other members of the Blizzard Group and asked with a sharp gaze, "Be honest. Did someone bully Lily?" The members all shook their heads at once. "No, of course not. None of us would bully Lily. Yeah, she's one of your most trusted people. Who'd dare mess with her? But now that you mention it, she has seemed a little out of it lately. Always looking at her phone. Maybe she's in love or something? Waiting for a message from someone? That's not impossible. She is at that age when people start falling in love. And just like that, whispers began to spread. Inside the office, Lily remained completely unaware of the conversation happening just outside the door. Fubuki fell into thought. She wasn't especially experienced in romance herself, but even she had to admit that what her group members said didn't sound far-fetched. Maybe that's really it, she murmured. In that case, it's nothing serious. She decided not to dwell on it. As long as no one had mistreated Lily, she didn't care enough to pry deeper. Meanwhile, the curiosity among the group members only continued to grow. Lady Fubuki, do you have any idea who Lily might be in love with? I'm dying to know. What kind of guy would catch her interest? Or maybe, it's a girl? Keep your voice down. Lily's still in the office. Their fascination wasn't baseless. Everyone in the group knew how much Lily admired Fubuki. In fact, some even suspected her feelings bordered on love. Because of that, most of them didn't really believe Lily had fallen for someone, whether it was a man or a woman. How would I know? That's her private business, Fubuki replied coldly. You all have your own jobs. Stop gossiping about people's personal lives. Yes, Lady Fubuki. Everyone straightened up and scattered quickly, no longer daring to chat idly. Oh, by the way, that B-class rank 4 guy, Camui. You've already figured out where he lives, haven't you? Suddenly remembering a certain B-class troublemaker who refused to follow her lead, Fubuki shifted the topic back to business. Chapter 29, The Mosquito Girl Attacks. Yes, Lady Fubuki. That guy lives in the ghost town of Z-City. Good. When we have time, we'll go pay him a visit and see just how capable he really is. Fubuki's voice remained calm, but there was a trace of arrogance behind her words. We need to give him a proper warning and make sure he understands that he's broken the rules of B-class. Didn't Lady Fubuki want to invite him to join us? Let's see first if he's even willing. Being personally invited by Lady Fubuki is an honor. No one in their right mind would reject such a thing. Yeah, that guy wouldn't dare turn it down. Unless he seriously overestimates himself. Clearly, none of the Blizzard group members thought Shinji posed any real problem. They were confident he would fall in line sooner or later. After all, a personal invitation from Lady Fubuki was a rare privilege, one that most B-class heroes would never even dream of receiving. Fubuki didn't continue the discussion. Instead, she returned to her own tasks without another word. Back in the office, Lily still had no idea that the group had already located Shinji's home. But even if they hadn't, she knew it was only a matter of time. That thought made her increasingly uneasy. If Lady Fubuki personally showed up with her team and tried to confront him, it would undo all of Lily's efforts. Everything she had worked toward would go to waste. But if Shinji were willing to visit the Blizzard group voluntarily, it would prevent any hostility and earn her praise from Lady Fubuki. It would be a perfect outcome. In the end, Lily couldn't suppress her anxiety anymore. She opened her phone and messaged him first. At that moment, Shinji was at home playing video games with Saitama. His phone lay on the floor cushion beside him, and when it buzzed with a message, he picked it up casually. It was from Lily. Shinji-senpai, have you thought it through yet? And, since it is a Japanese setting, I will be using some Japanese honorifics like senpai or sensei, but not sama. Bear with the cringe. Since he was in the middle of a match, Shinji didn't respond right away. He glanced at the message, then focused back on the screen. Meanwhile, Lily saw the message had been marked as read but received no reply. That made her even more anxious. If it had stayed unread, she could have waited patiently. But being left on read? That hit differently. 2 minutes later, Shinji defeated Saitama once again. Not joining. The reply was short, direct, and unmistakably final. He had no interest in joining the Blizzard group. That was all there was to it. Lily had been working through some documents when her phone vibrated again. She immediately reached for it, only to see that brief and decisive message. You. Suit yourself. She tapped out the response quickly, then turned off her phone. Her mood soured immediately. She had tried to speak with him sincerely, even giving him a way out. And still, he refused to listen. Fine. Let him deal with the consequences himself. When Lady Fubuki arrived in person and was met with that kind of attitude, Shinji was absolutely going to get chewed out. Lily had already warned him more than once. If he still refused to listen, then he had no one to blame but himself. She slumped over her desk, too irritated to focus on her work any longer. Did someone message you? Got something to take care of? We can pause the game if you want, Saitama asked, glancing at Shinji and noticing him fiddling with his phone. It's nothing. Just a small thing. Let's keep playing. Shinji replied casually and set his phone back down. All right. This time I'm gonna beat you with the new combo I just figured out. Saitama grinned and launched the next round with fierce determination. And the result? By the end, he had once again been completely shaved bald. Not that it mattered, considering he already was. Smack! Suddenly, a sharp slapping sound cut through the air. Shinji turned to look at Saitama in confusion, trying to figure out why he had just slapped himself out of nowhere. Saitama's palm remained stuck to his face as he explained, there was a mosquito. But I got it. However, the moment he pulled his hand away, the mosquito zipped out, buzzing cheerfully, completely unharmed, as if the slap had meant nothing. Saitama froze in disbelief, then immediately tried to catch it again. But the mosquito effortlessly dodged every attempt. No matter how many times he swatted, slapped, or lunged, he couldn't catch or kill the stubborn insect. Shinji didn't move. He just sat there watching, completely motionless, as Saitama flailed around the room. Yup, it had appeared. The strongest divine mosquito in all of One Punch Man, the legendary insect that was utterly immune to Saitama's attacks. Every swing missed, and even when contact was made, it shrugged off the force as if it were a breeze. Of course, Shinji knew this was just one of those ridiculous plot points the author included. It made no logical sense, but it was part of the world. Because of that, he had no intention of getting involved. He simply leaned back and enjoyed the show. Saitama grew more and more irritated until the mosquito finally vanished without a trace. Damn it! It actually got away. He looked furious, fists clenched, jaw tight. Meanwhile, Shinji remained seated, expressionless and silent. He wasn't even remotely surprised. What did catch his attention, though, was the fact that the legendary mosquito had appeared, which meant the rest of the event chain was about to begin. First up would be the demon-level monster, Mosquito Girl, and her target was none other than Z-City. Once he'd calmed down, Saitama flopped back onto the floor and turned on the TV. A program was airing at that very moment. The title on-screen read, Mass Panic. Unusual Mosquito Infestation. This year, mosquitoes have been breeding in massive numbers, severely disrupting residents' daily lives. What's the cause behind this outbreak? Let's bring in mosquito expert Mr. Kafeiji for some insight. To be honest, I'd never seen this kind of mosquito before. So I have no idea. Get off the screen! The ridiculous exchange came off more like a comedy skit than actual news. But right after, the program was abruptly interrupted by breaking news. A massive swarm of mosquitoes is heading towards Z-City. All citizens are advised to stay indoors. The preliminary threat level has been designated as Demon. The broadcast shifted to live footage. A thick, black swarm of mosquitoes filled the air like a storm cloud, blotting out the sky. The sight alone was enough to make your skin crawl. Every animal the swarm passed was instantly drained, left as desiccated, shriveled corpses. Saitama watched the screen, cold sweat forming on his forehead. Isn't this Z-City where we live? Hurry! Close the windows! Just one mosquito had already driven him nuts earlier. A whole swarm like that? He'd be sent into madness. Meanwhile, Mosquito Girl was leading the terrifying mass of insects, racing toward the city with inhuman speed. Elsewhere in the abandoned district, Vaccine Man, who had been aimlessly wandering around since settling into his new home, suddenly stopped. He turned his head toward the growing noise in the distance. His face twisted into an exaggerated JoJo-style art frame as he stared into the sky. What the hell is that noise? Chapter 30, Demon-Level Mosquito Girl. Saitama rushed through his apartment, slamming windows shut and locking doors before dashing over to Shinji's place to help him do the same. But just as he was about to close the final window, that same god-tier mosquito zipped back inside like it owned the place. You dare come back? This time I won't let you escape, damn bug. The instant Saitama spotted the familiar little pest, his anger exploded all over again. Meanwhile, Shinji remained on the couch, sipping tea with absolute calm. As long as that divine mosquito left him alone, he had no intention of wasting even a shred of energy trying to deal with it. What the hell are those things? Floating high above the ghost town, Vaccine Man narrowed his eyes at the distant, swirling mass of mosquitoes. A deep frown settled on his face. He didn't know much about the world beyond his programmed purpose. Born as the embodiment of the Earth's will, his goal had always been to eradicate humanity. Concepts like monsters were human inventions. As far as he was concerned, he was neither monster nor villain, just a force of nature. He could recognize mosquitoes, of course, but what truly puzzled him was the unmistakably humanoid figure suspended at the swarm's center. He raised a hand and attempted to summon his energy orbs, and to his surprise, they formed instantly. For the first time since Shinji had seized control of him, his powers responded without resistance. Up until now, he had been unable to harm humans in any way. He couldn't even conjure an energy blast. But if his abilities were working again, it means that figure clearly wasn't human. I've been bottling up this frustration for a while. Might as well vent it on these pests. Just as he prepared to act, the enormous mosquito swarm came to an abrupt halt in midair. He blinked in confusion. Shinji had issued a strict order: Vaccine Man was forbidden to leave the ghost town. And since the swarm had not yet crossed into that territory, he couldn't move forward to engage. He was stuck watching. At that same moment, someone else stepped in to confront the swarm. The TV broadcasts and emergency alerts had been effective. Z-City residents were either sealed away inside their homes or packed into evacuation shelters. The city's streets and shops were empty, eerily silent. Well, not entirely empty. One figure remained. Or rather, one cyborg. Standing beneath the thick black cloud of mosquitoes was a young blond man dressed in a short-sleeved shirt and jeans. His body was encased in mechanical plating, with even his face bearing metallic elements. This was Demon Cyborg Genos, though at this stage, he had yet to officially earn that title. Only his brain remained organic. The rest of his body had been entirely reconstructed with cybernetic parts. Though his face was armored, it still retained his original human features, carefully replicated to preserve his identity. I see. These mosquitoes follow your commands, drain blood from others, and then transfer it all to you. His glowing eyes locked onto the figure in the center of the swarm. No wonder they move in perfect sync. So if I eliminate their master, the entire threat disappears, right? Genos stood motionless as thousands of mosquitoes swarmed around him, but his fully mechanical body rendered him completely immune to their bites. Unfazed, he calmly looked up at the figure floating at the swarm's center. That figure was none other than Mosquito Girl, a grotesque yet strangely elegant fusion of human and insect. Her disaster level was classified as demon, placing her among the more dangerous threats. Though her figure retained the general shape of a young human woman, her limbs had transformed into spindly, mosquito-like appendages. Her back was outfitted with translucent wings and bulbous sacs filled with blood. Her face, while retaining a degree of feminine charm, had a distinctly insectoid structure, and her mouth featured a long, retractable proboscis that was currently hidden. According to official data, Mosquito Girl stood at 2.6 meters tall, mostly due to the disproportionate length of her mosquito legs. After those legs were destroyed and later replaced with human ones by Dr. Casino, her height eventually returned to a more normal range, about 1.6 to 1.7 meters. Heh! She let out a cold snort, eyes sharp and full of contempt as she stared down at Genos. Suck him dry! At her command, the swarm surged forward, surrounding Genos in a dense, churning cloud of black. Any normal human caught in that chaos would have been drained to dust dozens of times over by now. But Genos didn't flinch. A cyborg with no blood to offer, he stood untouched. With a single motion, he raised his arm and activated an energy pulse that vaporized every mosquito in his immediate vicinity. Mosquito Girl's expression contorted in shock. Genos calmly lifted his hand again, this time pointing it directly at her. His tone was cold and precise, devoid of emotion. Don't move. Accept your death quietly. Heh, just you. She scoffed, clearly underestimating him as she smiled coldly. Incinerate. In that instant, a torrent of energy gathered in Genos' palm. The charge was swift, and in less than a second, he unleashed a searing blast of high-temperature plasma aimed straight at Mosquito Girl. But she was fast. With a sharp movement, she veered out of its path and shot toward him like a bullet. Genos' eyes flashed with alarm. Clang! Her proboscis struck with deadly force, piercing his left arm and tearing it clean off at the joint. Hee. She cackled, reveling in her successful counter. Huh? Her grin froze. Something felt off. Suddenly her body felt strangely light. She turned her head in confusion, and her lower legs were gone. She looked down just in time to see Genos casually flick her severed limbs to the ground like trash. Without hesitation, Genos raised both arms and began firing off another rapid barrage of energy blasts, each one aimed to eliminate her before she could regain control of the fight. Their battle had unknowingly drifted into the boundaries of the ghost town. As she twisted and dodged the incoming attacks, Mosquito Girl's once confident expression began to shift. This wasn't going her way. That guy. She gritted her teeth, fully aware she couldn't let this drag on. The tide was turning fast. Time to use her trump card. Spreading her arms wide, Mosquito Girl unleashed a high-frequency pulse that summoned every mosquito within a 100-meter radius to her side. Though the humans had taken shelter too quickly for the swarm to drain much from them, the animals scattered across the city hadn't been so fortunate. Now, every drop of blood they had sucked was being funneled into her body. The air shifted. The already massive swarm thickened, writhing above her like a living storm cloud. With each passing second, her figure began to pulse and expand, gradually morphing as her power level surged. Genos' sensors immediately detected the change. His systems flared a warning. Something was wrong. He began charging a high-powered energy blast, the core in his chest spinning faster as a heat vortex formed around his arms. He had no intention of giving her time to complete her transformation. Back at Shinji's place, Saitama was still locked in battle with the infamous mosquito. No matter how many times he lunged, slapped, or spun through the air like a man possessed, he still couldn't land a hit. The insect dodged effortlessly, taunting him with every buzz. Then, just as Mosquito Girl issued her call, the mosquito zipped straight through the narrow gap in the door and vanished outside. TCH. I guess it's about time. Shinji set his teacup down gently on the table. The porcelain clinked once and stood perfectly still. In the very next second, he disappeared. He used Flying Thunder God and reappeared instantly beside Vaccine Man, having marked him with a teleportation seal long ago for emergencies like this. Sure enough, the swarm was close. Shinji looked up slightly, his gaze locking on the dark cloud in the sky. Mosquito Girl was already in the midst of her transformation, her body expanding as it absorbed blood at an unnatural rate. Vaccine Man barely reacted to Shinji's sudden arrival. At this point, he was used to it. Make sure your aim is precise. Don't hit the wrong target. Shinji's tone was casual, almost bored, as he gave the warning. He had already sensed Genos on the battlefield. One poorly aimed blast from Vaccine Man could level half the district. Not ideal. TCH, such a hassle. Vaccine Man scratched the back of his head in annoyance. Fine, I'll just go shove it right in her face. That work? Chapter 31, Cyborg Genos. After that god-level mosquito was summoned by Mosquito Girl, Saitama was instantly enraged and dashed after it without hesitation. Get back here, he shouted furiously, eyes locked on the insect. But almost immediately, something else caught his attention, a strange, massive black cloud hanging ominously in the sky. What the hell is that? Ugh, it looks like a swarm of wriggling mosquitoes. Saitama squinted in surprise at the dark mass hovering in midair. Then his eyes narrowed. Wait, there's someone still here. Genos, who had been concentrating on the situation, was momentarily startled by Saitama's sudden appearance. He quickly warned him, Hey, kid. You need to evacuate right now. If that swarm notices you, you'll be attacked. Seriously? Saitama froze, momentarily dumbfounded. Then let's hurry and run. Right then, a strange, distorted noise rose from within the mosquito swarm that had completely enveloped Mosquito Girl. Genos immediately turned his head, eyes sharp. The swarm surged like a crashing wave. Even faced with that terrifying sight, Genos remained composed. Energy began to build in his palm, glowing hotter by the second. Incinerate! An immense blast erupted, scorching everything within a 500-meter radius. Every mosquito caught in the wave of fire was reduced to ash. When I detected your presence, I already confirmed there were no other lifeforms nearby. That's why I can wipe you out without hesitation. Standing in the middle of a burned battlefield, Genos fixed an intense stare on Mosquito Girl, with flames flickering behind him. Suddenly, he remembered that there had been someone else, someone who had just appeared beside him a moment ago. Damn it! There was another person. He whipped his head around and spotted the bald guy from before. Saitama was standing there, completely naked. His clothes had been incinerated by the blast. Relax, I'm fine. By the way, that move you just used? Perfect anti-mosquito weapon, Saitama said casually, his expression calm and unaffected. The hell with this thing? Genos blinked, staring in disbelief at the unscathed man in front of him. He. Mosquito Girl's cold laughter echoed ominously from above. She had completed her transformation. Her body had turned a dark crimson, though her pale skin remained mostly intact. Subtle mutations ran across her limbs and back, revealing where she had fused with the swarm. But most terrifying of all was the power radiating from her. Her strength had exploded beyond anything from before. Before Genos could even react, she appeared behind him in an instant. Whoosh! A massive wound tore through Genos' waist, nearly slicing him in half. He threw a punch, but she disappeared again. Her speed was simply too overwhelming. Genos couldn't land any hits. Ha ha ha. You're pathetic. She laughed with cruel delight, dismantling his mechanical body piece by piece. In seconds, Genos found himself cornered and hopeless. Realizing he had no chance of turning the tide, Genos began the sequence to self-destruct. As the high-pitched beep 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 echoed from his core, a glowing sphere of energy suddenly appeared in someone's hand. Vaccine Man suddenly stepped between Mosquito Girl and Genos. Mosquito Girl's arrogant grin froze mid-smirk. The energy radiating from the glowing orb in Vaccine Man's hand was terrifying. I'm in a really bad mood right now, he muttered, voice low and furious. Without another word, he shoved the orb straight into her face. Boom! The explosion blasted her away. Her blood sacs ruptured midair, bursting into a red mist. Limbs and wings tore off as Mosquito Girl was flung who knew how far, her dismembered body vanishing into the distance. Alert! Your subordinate, Vaccine Man, has defeated the demon-level monster Mosquito Girl. Reward, 40 points. Alert! First time defeating a demon-level monster. Bonus reward, 30 points. Since Vaccine Man was one of Shinji's subordinates, the rewards were automatically credited to him. However, The explosion's shockwave traveled far beyond its intended target, leveling entire sections of surrounding buildings. Fortunately, this area had long been evacuated, so no innocent lives were affected. Genos hadn't been seriously injured either. Not only had Saitama absorbed some of the explosion by standing close to him, but even without that buffer, the blast wasn't strong enough to damage his core. Lying on the ground, barely able to move, Genos stared in stunned silence at the figure floating overhead. Despite the human clothing and vaguely humanoid form, Vaccine Man was clearly a monster. A monster, attacking another monster? And he'd taken out Mosquito Girl in just one strike? As Genos tried to make sense of what he'd just witnessed, Vaccine Man glanced down at him. Something about Genos made his blood boil again. Just like the grotesque mosquito earlier, this guy didn't feel human. And Vaccine Man was still furious. Hurling another energy orb might be a good way to vent some of that rage. He ignored Saitama, who stood calmly nearby, untouchable, unreadable, and began condensing another orb of energy in his palm, this one aimed right at Genos' face. Damn it! So this guy's a monster too? Realizing Vaccine Man was preparing another attack, Genos tried instinctively to stand. But his legs, sliced clean off by Mosquito Girl, couldn't support him. He collapsed back to the ground. Was this it? Was he about to self-destruct again? I'm sorry, Doctor. He started the self-destruct sequence again. But just then, Shinji suddenly appeared out of nowhere using the Flying Thunder God technique and struck Vaccine Man hard on the back of the head. Smack! The sudden slap stunned not only Vaccine Man but left Genos completely speechless. Vaccine Man turned his head slowly, dazed. His eyes flickered with a jumble of emotions, shock, confusion, anger, and even a faint trace of grievance. I told you not to harm innocents. What were you just trying to do? Shinji began scolding him without hesitation. But he's not human, Vaccine Man muttered in protest, his tone bordering on sulky. Cyborgs are still humans. Remember that next time. Yes. Vaccine Man lowered his head, nodding meekly like a child caught misbehaving. You're strict. But wait, was he seriously about to attack this guy just now? At that point, Saitama finally spoke, a confused look on his face. He had been watching the scene without concern, assuming Vaccine Man was just messing around. It wasn't until Shinji's scolding that he realized how close things had come to turning ugly. Yeah, that's why I had to teach him a lesson, Shinji replied with a calm nod. Then he shifted his attention to Genos, still sprawled on the ground with sparks flickering from damaged joints. You okay? Sorry about that. This guy got carried away. Genos snapped out of his daze, eyes wide with sudden focus. He immediately responded, My name is Genos. I'm a cyborg who pursues justice on my own. He had already pieced things together. That monster who destroyed Mosquito Girl in one strike, no matter what he was clearly the subordinate of the red-eyed youth standing in front of him. This was an opportunity. One he couldn't afford to miss. Chapter 32, Master Shinji. Please, tell me your name. Genos earnestly repeated his request, eyes locked on Shinji. Shinji blinked, confused, then silently pointed to himself like he wasn't sure he heard right. Instead of replying, he grabbed Saitama by the shoulder and pushed him forward like a human shield. From Genos' posture and intensity, it was painfully clear what he wanted. He was looking for a master, and in Shinji's mind, that role clearly belonged to Saitama. What's going on here? Now front and center, Saitama looked around, baffled by the sudden attention. No, not you. I meant the one with blood-red eyes. Genos quickly clarified, eyes still fixed on Shinji. You hear that? He's talking to you, Saitama said as he turned back toward him. My name is Shinji, Shinji finally answered, clearly reluctant but with no way out. Master Shinji. Please accept me as your disciple. Genos' voice rang with conviction, practically trembling with emotion. Me? Shinji pointed at himself again, still not quite believing it. Something felt seriously off. Wasn't Genos supposed to become Saitama's student? That was how the story was supposed to go, right? He hadn't even done anything impressive in the fight just now. He deliberately left Mosquito Girl to Vaccine Man and stayed out of it. It was because he didn't want any glitch in timeline where Saitama fails to save Genos. If Genos had any sense, he should have chosen someone like Saitama, or even Vaccine Man, over him. It wasn't that he thought Genos was beneath him. He just had absolutely nothing useful to teach. His own abilities came from the system. His strength was built on stat boosts, his techniques were cheats like Dual Kamui and the Flying Thunder God technique, none of which a cyborg like Genos could replicate. He wasn't trying to act modest. He truly didn't suit the role of a teacher. And yet, Genos still picked him. Was it because of that slap earlier? The one he gave to Vaccine Man? Yes. Please take me as your student. Genos repeated, tone even firmer, like he was ready to kneel on broken glass if it came to that. Let's not talk about that right now. You should go get yourself repaired first, Shinji replied quickly, steering the conversation away. Genos had been torn apart by Mosquito Girl, his body a mess of shattered plating and exposed wires. One of his mechanical eyes was even hanging from its socket like a broken camera lens. But as long as his core was undamaged, Dr. Casino would be able to rebuild and upgrade him, probably better than before. I'm fine. Please, take me as your disciple first. Genos, however, wasn't having it. He completely ignored Shinji's deflection, his priorities nailed firmly into place. Saitama, I'll leave this one to you. I've got something to handle. With no better solution, Shinji handed Genos off like a parcel he didn't want to sign for. In his mind, Saitama was clearly the better candidate for a teacher anyway, more grounded, stronger, and honestly more patient. Wait, huh? Hold on a sec. Saitama finally realized something was off and tried to stop him, but by the time the words left his mouth, Shinji had already disappeared with Vaccine Man in tow. Master! Genos called out, whipping his head around. But Shinji was gone, completely vanished without a trace. That sealed it. There was no doubt in Genos' mind anymore. This man had to be the master of that terrifying monster. Not only was Vaccine Man following his orders, but Shinji's speed was so astonishing that Genos couldn't even track when or how he left. Do you want me to take you to the hospital, mechanic? You're Genos, right? Saitama scratched his cheek awkwardly and asked, clearly unsure what to do next. No need. Thank you for your concern. The doctor will come to pick me up, Genos replied with polite composure. Even while answering, he studied the bald man closely. Something about him wasn't normal. When Genos had triggered his massive 500-meter incineration blast, this man had been standing right beside him, yet he emerged completely unharmed. Only his clothes had been vaporized. And he seemed to know that red-eyed youth named Shinji too. Could it be he was another disciple of Master Shinji? Of course, Shinji could never have guessed that Genos had now mistaken Saitama for his own student. The irony was almost too perfect. The idea that Shinji, of all people, could be Saitama's teacher? Complete bullshit. Alright then, I'll be heading back, Saitama said casually, waving a hand as he turned to leave. He could already tell Genos was the clingy type and wanted no part of that situation. Fortunately, this was an uninhabited district of Z City, so even without clothes, there was no one around to report a naked man strolling off. Still, he felt a pang of regret about his shirt. His beloved t-shirt, the one that had Hage printed across it in big English letters, was now gone. Whether Saitama understood that it was a romanized version of, meaning bald, or wore it as some ironic fashion statement, was anyone's guess. Once Saitama disappeared from view, Genos blinked and muttered to himself. Damn, I forgot to ask Master Shinji where he lives. But he shook it off almost immediately. Oh well. This is the uninhabited zone of Z City. I heard barely anyone lives out here. If I ask around, I should be able to figure out which houses are active, With that, Genos pulled out his communicator and contacted Dr. Casino, requesting pickup. At the moment, he was too damaged to move on his own. Meanwhile, Shinji and Vaccine Man had already returned home. That guy just now, was he trying to become your student? Why didn't you accept him? Vaccine Man asked curiously as he floated through the living room. You're asking me that? Why don't you take him as your student instead? Shinji rolled his eyes, flopping onto the couch. Yeah, no thanks. Vaccine Man replied without hesitation. His tone was sharp, and the disdain in his voice was clear. He still carried a deep-rooted prejudice against humans, and the idea of taking one as a disciple was downright repulsive to him, although the said human was a cyborg now. Let's just hope he doesn't come knocking. Though, that's probably wishful thinking, Shinji muttered with a sigh. He already had a feeling that Genos would find him. It wasn't exactly difficult. The uninhabited zone of Z-City barely had any residents, and even without asking around, Genos probably had built-in sensors capable of picking up life signatures. Sure enough, a few days later, there came a loud voice from outside their home. Master! Master Shinji! He was shouting Shinji's name like a fanboy at a concert. Is that the cyborg guy again? Should we open the door? Saitama asked without even pausing his game. He and Vaccine Man were deep into a match, eyes locked on the screen, controllers in hand. Guess I have no choice. Shinji stood with a resigned expression and went to open the door. He couldn't keep Genos out there yelling forever. You know, I think there's been some misunderstanding, Shinji said as soon as he cracked the door open. I'm really not that strong, and I don't have anything I can teach you. Master Shinji, I've come to study under you. Genos replied earnestly, standing tall despite his still healing frame. And I'm telling you, I really have nothing to teach. Shinji sighed and rubbed his temples. Well, since you're already here, come in for some tea, and then you can be on your way. He didn't want to be rude. Slamming the door in Genos' face would have been cruel. Genos said nothing. His silence wasn't agreement, it was resolve. It was clear he had no intention of leaving after a single cup of tea. The moment he stepped inside, his eyes swept across the room and locked onto the scene before him. Saitama and Vaccine Man sat in front of the TV, both intensely focused on their game, their hands flying over the controllers. And in that moment, Genos' theory was once again confirmed. This overwhelmingly powerful bald man and the human-like monster were both disciples of Master Shinji. If he could join their ranks and become a student of Master Shinji, he would gain the strength needed to crush all evil in his way. Chapter 33, Total Free Range. Saitama and Vaccine Man were still locked in their fierce gaming showdown, the rapid clicks of their controllers echoing through the cramped apartment while Shinji quietly prepared and served fragrant tea for Genos, who accepted the cup with a polite nod yet left it untouched on the low table since, as a cyborg, he could no longer enjoy ordinary food or drink. Allow me to be absolutely clear, I'm not qualified to take a disciple, and I honestly have zero interest in becoming anyone's master, Shinji said, hoping directness would settle the matter, but Genos looked unconvinced. Impossible, master. You clearly already guide 2 pupils, and both are remarkably powerful, the blonde cyborg insisted with calm certainty. 2 pupils? Shinji blinked, utterly stunned. When had he gained 2 students? A second later, the penny dropped. Was Genos talking about Saitama and Vaccine Man? He could, with effort, imagine Vaccine Man wanting instruction, but Saitama? Who in their right mind would assume Saitama answered to him? Letting that cave bald guy call him a teacher sounded completely absurd. Yes, those 2 right over there, Genos continued, gesturing toward the pair still glued to their screen. Please tell me which is the senior disciple and which is junior so I can address them correctly in the future. Somebody mention me? Saitama glanced over, curiosity flickering across his face. That single moment of distraction proved fatal. Vaccine Man pounced immediately, chaining together a savage combo attack. Dibs! Haha, victory is mine! Vaccine Man crowed with wicked delight. Oi, that's a dick move. Saitama protested, frantic thumbs trying to break free, but once a combo landed you were stuck. His health meter was already bleeding red, and that last volley drained it, knocking his avatar clean out of the match. Sorry, I guess I pulled your focus, Genos murmured apologetically. Even without much gaming experience, he understood he'd just caused trouble for the bald hero. No sweat, I simply spaced out, Saitama replied, waving the apology away before swiveling toward Vaccine Man with a dramatic pout. But seriously, ambushing me like that? You are one dirty man. So what? A win's a win, Vaccine Man shot back, a sly grin spreading across his purple face. While the two continued to bicker over their game, Shinji leaned in and tried to set the record straight with Genos. Genos, you're seriously mistaken. Neither of them is my disciple. Especially the bald one. HM? Bald? Isn't that a flesh-colored helmet? Genos tilted his head, eyeing Saitama's gleaming dome with genuine surprise. No, that's his actual scalp, Shinji clarified, sighing a little. What? That's really not head armor? Genos blinked and studied Saitama even harder, his mechanical eyes narrowing. If that's true, I can't believe someone could go bald so young. Hey, I can hear you, you know. Saitama grumbled, the vein on his forehead twitching like it had a mind of its own. Sorry, Shinji said quickly, then leaned closer to Genos and lowered his voice. Saitama is kind of sensitive about the whole bald thing. Best not to bring it up. Understood, Master Shinji. Genos gave a crisp nod. Wait, no, please don't call me Master, Shinji said, practically recoiling as he pointed at Saitama. Saitama is way stronger than I am. If you want a mentor, call him Master Saitama and go learn from him. The words had barely left his mouth when Saitama's back suddenly stiffened, his expression somewhere between dread and disbelief. Is that so? But I believe that since I've already chosen Master Shinji, I should stay true to that decision. Wavering now would show a lack of sincerity, and no real master would accept a disciple who can't even commit. Genos said with absolute conviction. Clearly, he wasn't buying any of Shinji's attempts to redirect him. In Genos' view, that bald man, no, Saitama, might be absurdly strong, but Shinji stood right beside him on the same lofty pedestal. They were both monsters in human skin, both beyond reach. And if he started bouncing between the two of them like a lost puppy, he'd never be taken seriously by either. Shinji's head began to throb. This was turning into a whole mess. Yeah, look at this kid. He's so sincere, Saitama said lazily, tossing fuel onto the fire like he couldn't care less. Just accept him already, Shinji. He honestly found the whole master-disciple situation annoying and was more than happy to push Genos onto Shinji instead. Even Master Saitama agrees. Please, Master Shinji, accept me as your disciple. Genos bowed deeply, his tone utterly serious and unwavering. Just because Saitama agrees doesn't mean I do. Shinji yelled in his mind. And that bastard, how dare he just pass this problem onto me? But then again, he had thrown Saitama under the bus first, hadn't he? So maybe this was karma. I have said this more than once already, I honestly do not have anything to teach you, Shinji repeated, his patience fraying. He could practically see the future, Genos staring at him with wounded eyes after discovering his new master had no secret manuals, then blaming himself for choosing poorly. Being called teacher or master should come with genuine responsibility, not a fancy label tossed around for fun. Even so, Genos did not seem like the type to complain if things went south. Surely you are joking, master. You have already raised such a capable monster. Still uncertain, Genos glanced at Vaccine Man and whispered, he is a monster, right? Vaccine Man puffed out his chest. Are you speaking of me? By your human standards, I do qualify as a monster. However, I was born from the will of the earth itself. I serve as the planet's emissary, known as Vaccine Man. His declaration rang with theatrical gravity, though neither listener cared. Shinji and Genos were wrapped up in their own tug-of-war. "I told you, he is not my disciple," Shinji insisted, tapping his temple for emphasis. "Even so, I still wish to become your student." "I am certain following you will help me grow," Genos answered, voice unshakable. No matter how many times Shinji denied him, the cyborg simply would not back down. Shinji rubbed his forehead and felt the fight drain away. "Fine. Tag along if you must. Just remember, I am not your master. I have no duty to teach you anything, not because I refuse, but because I literally cannot. Think it over." Genos did not even blink. He nodded, eyes blazing. "I have already made my decision." "You, Sai, do what you want," Shinji muttered, shoulders sagging. Alert! The host has gained a new disciple, Genos. Reward, 50 points plus Mentor's Encouragement. Mentor's Encouragement. As your disciple rises in the Hero Association rankings, you will receive corresponding rewards. Well, Shinji thought, that actually sounds decent. The system's gift was at least a small consolation. He had been clear enough. Genos would be a completely free-range disciple, growing by himself, while Shinji kicked back and collected bonuses for doing nothing at all. Across the room, Saitama finally exhaled in visible relief. The hyper-focused cyborg who attracted trouble like a magnet had fixed on Shinji instead of him, and that was perfectly fine by the bald hero. Saitama would be shedding his other hairs if that annoying cyborg were to become Saitama's disciple. Chapter 34, House of Evolution. "Then, Master Shinji, would you like to hear my story now?" Genos asked, his expression serious and full of purpose. "Sure, but keep it short," Shinji emphasized the words like a warning flare. He knew what would happen otherwise. Genos had a habit of turning a simple question into a 10,000-word epic monologue. Even Saitama wouldn't sit through that kind of speech, and Shinji definitely had no intention of doing so either. To put it simply, before becoming a cyborg, Genos survived a tragedy. A mind-controlled cyborg tore through his town and slaughtered his entire family. He alone lived. Crushed by his powerlessness, he eventually met Dr. Casino and begged him for a new body, one strong enough to take revenge on that rogue cyborg and cleanse the world of evil. Just as Genos began gearing up for his full dramatic retelling, Shinji cut him off with a sharp look, forcing the cyborg to condense his story into a single sentence. "I want to eliminate all evil. That's why I want to become as powerful as you, Master Shinji." This time, he actually kept it short. "That's a noble goal," Shinji replied. "As for becoming like me, well, all I can say is do your best. I will work hard." Genos nodded solemnly, fists clenched with conviction. "First things first," Shinji said, shifting the topic. "Have you registered with the Hero Association yet?" "Not yet." Genos shook his head, then blinked in surprise. "Wait, does that mean you already have? You must be an S-class hero, right?" "Nope. I'm just a B-class hero." Shinji corrected him with zero hesitation. "That doesn't make any sense." Genos stared at him like he'd just declared the sky was green. "It's not that deep. I'm in B-class," Shinji said simply. Saitama, though, he's currently ranked 15th in S-class. He spoke with a straight face, but Genos looked like his entire worldview had been flipped upside down. He whipped out his phone, immediately opening the Hero Association's official site and scrolling through the rankings. Sure enough, there was Saitama at S-class, rank 15. But what truly left Genos dumbfounded was what came next. He kept scrolling down through A-class, nothing. No mention of Shinji at all. Then finally, in the B-class list, he spotted it, hero codename, Camui, real name Shinji, currently ranked 4th. The attached photo erased all doubt, it was unmistakably him. "This has to be some kind of mistake," Genos said, baffled. "With your strength, Master Shinji, there's no way you should be stuck in B-class. If you've been mistreated, I'd be more than willing to speak to the Hero Association on your behalf. It's not about unfair treatment. It was my own choice, Shinji said with a small shrug. Really, it's nothing to get worked up about. I will climb higher. Alright then. Genos respected that. If his master didn't want to climb the ranks, then that was that. In that case, I'll go register with the Hero Association myself. With that, Genos stood up, ready to head out and officially join the hero world. He had never thought much of the Hero Association before. For Genos, justice was always a personal mission, something he pursued on his own, without needing titles or organizations. But knowing that Master Shinji was also registered as a hero changed his view. If someone like Shinji saw value in being part of the association, then maybe it wasn't as superficial as Genos had assumed. That very same day, Genos headed straight to the Hero Certification Exam Center in Z-City to take the test. As expected, he crushed both the written and physical portions without breaking a sweat. And just like that, the Hero Association added a new phase to its S-Class roster, right behind Saitama. S-Class, rank 18. Alert! Your disciple Genos has achieved S-Class rank 18. Growth reward, 20 points. At the exact moment Genos was assigned his rank, Shinji received a fresh reward from the system. Based on how the notification was worded, it seemed he'd earn system points every time Genos advanced in rank. So if Genos climbed from 18th to 17th, Shinji would get another reward, and so on. Later that day, after attending a brief orientation seminar, Genos returned home. Master Shinji, I've officially completed my hero registry process, he reported, sitting upright and poised like a student in front of a strict teacher. Machem. With your abilities, I assume they placed you in S-Class? Shinji asked with casual indifference. Yes, Genos nodded, though inwardly he was even more puzzled than before. The exam had been far too easy. Simple, really. With Shinji's strength, he should have been placed in the S-Class without question. Why wasn't he? Could it be that the Hero Association wasn't as transparent or fair as it claimed to be? Genos didn't press the issue, since Shinji had clearly been avoiding it. But in the back of his mind, a quiet suspicion began to take root. He made a note to be extra careful when dealing with the association from now on. Well done, Shinji said, nodding. Since you've chosen to follow me, this means it'll be easier for you to fight alongside us. That was how he framed it, anyway, but really, Shinji was just covering up his hands-off approach. He still had no plans to teach Genos anything. He wasn't about to start assigning goals or encouraging him to chase higher ranks either. He'd already committed to free-range mentorship, and he wasn't about to change that now. Indeed. It seems joining the Hero Association was the right choice, Genos said firmly, nodding with conviction. The House of Evolution stood hidden deep within the mountains. From the outside, it looked like a tall, quiet building, but that was just a decoy. The real House of Evolution was buried beneath it, in a massive underground laboratory few had ever seen. This facility had been founded by a man named Dr. Genus, a once-renowned scientist whose genius earned him worldwide acclaim in his youth. He made countless contributions to society, but over time, the applause faded. People praised his intelligence but rejected his ideals. Dr. Genus believed that the human race was weak and primitive. In his eyes, humans were little more than clever animals, flawed by nature and destined to stagnate. The only one he saw as truly evolved was himself. At just 15, he wrote out a detailed plan to reshape the world and guide humanity into a new era through artificial evolution. By the time he entered his 70s and sensed death approaching, he decided to speed things up. He halted his own aging and created an army of clones, each as brilliant and driven as he was. With them, he began a series of brutal experiments. They started with animals, then progressed to humans. Mosquito Girl had been one of the outcomes of this research. He named the place the House of Evolution. It wasn't just a lab, it was the foundation of his dream to force humanity forward through controlled transformation. Inside the dimly lit lab, filled with glowing tubes and strange biological specimens suspended in liquid, voices echoed. Mosquito Girl was defeated, one of the clones asked. She was just a trial run, Dr. Genus replied calmly. Without her blood absorption ability, she's no different from a fragile bug. No, she was defeated while she was in the middle of absorbing blood. And she lost completely. What? The clone didn't speak further. Instead, he walked to the control panel and brought up footage on a giant monitor. This is part of the surveillance video. Please watch. The screen lit up with the image of Mosquito Girl being obliterated by a massive energy orb, her body flung back before disintegrating completely. She lost to a monster? Dr. Genus said, leaning in. He was not only surprised by her defeat but also by how swiftly and decisively she was eliminated. However, what happened afterward fascinated him even more. Wait. It's not over yet, the clone said as he skipped forward in the footage. Suddenly, another figure appeared. Shinji. He moved with impossible speed, faster than the camera could fully capture. Without hesitation, he slapped Vaccine Man so hard that the monster was stunned. Moments later, Vaccine Man dropped to his knees like a scolded pet, showing no resistance at all. That thing didn't even try to fight back? Dr. Genus's eyes lit up with excitement. And then he smiled. His speed, completely beyond human limits. That level of control over his body suggests a degree of evolution I've never seen. He placed his hands behind his back and stared at the screen. This one might be the perfect specimen. I want to study him thoroughly. Chapter 35, Fubuki arrives. Also, keep an eye on that naked bald pervert standing next to him. I'm not sure why he's not wearing any clothes, but that body of his, there's something off about it. Saitama hadn't displayed any power yet, and there was no footage of him walking away unscathed from Genos' massive area of effect attack. Still, the clones couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than met the eye. Just take care of it while you're at it, Dr. Genus said calmly. Invite him for a full physical as well. He didn't speak with urgency, just quiet confidence. Send someone to approach them. Especially the one with the red eyes. If persuasion doesn't work, don't hesitate to use force. Understood. The clone gave a nod and walked off without another word. After passing the hero certification exam and officially entering S-Class, Genos hadn't even gone on his first mission yet, but his name was already spreading fast. Fan clubs were popping up left and right, for both Genos and Saitama. S-Class rookies were extremely rare. First came Saitama, and then just days later, another unknown name appeared in the ranks. The media scrambled to learn more, but the mystery only made them more fascinating. The two new S-Class heroes had one major thing in common: they never gave interviews. Even spotting them on camera was a rare treat. Between the two, Genos had clearly gained more popularity. His sharp look, robotic limbs, and cool, distant demeanor made him a fan favorite. Saitama, despite being stronger, just didn't have the visual appeal, especially not with that plain face and bald head. Seriously, what's with those dead eyes? Freaking Tibetan fox. Not that Saitama cared. That same day, another group made their move. The Blizzard group had officially run out of patience. Shinji still hadn't shown up to greet or acknowledge Fubuki. In the world of B-class heroes, ignoring unspoken rules like this wasn't something they could let slide. If they let one person ignore Fubuki's position, others would follow, and their control over B-class would fall apart. Fubuki herself arrived at the edge of the abandoned zone, flanked by two of her top lieutenants. As always, she wore her signature deep green dress, paired with a fur-trimmed coat and high heels that clicked sharply against the ground. We're about to enter the target's hideout. If he shows even the slightest resistance, you both know what to do. Yes, ma'am. We'll teach him a lesson he won't forget. Nobody disrespects Lady Fubuki and gets away with it. Her escorts were two well-known B-class heroes, Eyelashes, rank 2, and Mountain Ape, rank 3. Eyelashes had long hair tied into a braid, with his namesake lashes giving him an eccentric look that matched his alias. Mountain Ape was a massive man with fists the size of helmets and a chin shaped suspiciously like a peach, or worse. With little ceremony, Mountain Ape casually snapped the lock on the chain-link gate, and the three of them stepped into the abandoned zone like they owned the place. About 10 minutes later, Shinji sat comfortably in the living room. Vaccine Man was over at Saitama's place, fully immersed in another video game match. Genos hadn't officially moved into the abandoned zone yet, so for now, Shinji had the place mostly to himself. Then, a sharp voice rang out from beyond the house. B-Class Rank 4, Shinji. We know you're in there. Eyelash's voice echoed down the empty streets. Come out. Lady Blizzard of Hell, B-Class Rank 1, has something to say to you. Shinji instantly understood what this was about. The girl with the most stunning manga covers had come knocking. But seriously, what's with the tone? At the very least, they could have knocked. Standing outside and shouting like that was just plain rude. He grumbled inwardly and stood up, heading for the door. Opening it, he greeted them with a smile. Hello. Would you like to come in for some tea first? No need. Lady Fubuki isn't here for tea. This is official business. Eyelashes cut straight to the point, his expression stiff with hostility. Both he and Mountain Ape wore matching scowls. Their body language made it clear that they weren't here for polite conversation. Fubuki stepped forward, a little calmer, but her posture screamed superiority. Arms folded across her chest, she wore her pride like armor. Nice to meet you, Rookie Shinji. I'm Fubuki, also known as Blizzard of Hell. You've heard that name before, haven't you? She emphasized rookie just enough to make it sting, her voice laced with arrogance. By the way, she looks fine. I know. Sounds impressive. And then? Shinji responded with a mild smile. The air froze. Fubuki, Eyelashes, and Mountain Ape all stared at him, clearly stunned. This guy, he's seriously arrogant. From their perspective, any B-class hero who didn't immediately bow his head and offer praise upon meeting Fubuki was either ignorant or just plain disrespectful. Lady Fubuki is the #1 hero in B-class. Haven't you figured that out yet? Eyelashes said coldly, a hint of menace in his tone. The message was clear, keep acting like this, and things would escalate fast. I said I know. What, do you expect me to say something like, Lady Fubuki, you're so amazing? Shinji asked, genuinely puzzled. In Japan, social hierarchy and seniority were practically sacred. Respect for superiors was a core part of the culture, especially in structured systems like the Hero Association. A hero like Fubuki, who ruled over B-class, was used to being treated like nobility. But Shinji had no intention of following that strict tradition. And he had his own way of doing things. Same with Saitama. He had zero patience for hierarchical nonsense. That's about right. But your attitude's way too half-hearted. Eyelashes wasn't backing down. His scowl deepened as he stepped forward, his voice sharper. You're acting like none of this matters. For a rookie, the first thing you should have done after becoming a B-class hero was come greet Lady Fubuki. Oh, that? Shinji answered flatly. No big deal. I can do that now. He cleared his throat and said in the most casual voice possible, Hello, I'm Shinji. Pleased to meet you. This, damn fuck dash. Eyelashes looked like he was about to explode. The forced politeness, the deadpan tone, this guy clearly didn't mean a word of it. But before things could get worse, Fubuki raised a hand. Forget it, she said, cutting off whatever Eyelashes was about to shout. She stepped forward with a calmer tone, though her eyes still held the weight of authority. You're new to the Hero Association. I get it. Maybe you don't understand how things work yet. But if you keep up this attitude, you're not going to get very far. That's fine. I'm fine with remaining at the bottom. Shinji replied without the slightest shift in expression. Eyelashes and Mountain Ape were thrown off again. They had never seen anyone, especially a new recruit, talk to Fubuki like this. Most people bent over backward just to get in her good graces. Even Fubuki paused. She thought he was bluffing. Everyone wanted to climb the ladder, even if they pretended not to. No one turned down power when it was handed to them. After a brief silence, she tried a different angle. You're only saying that because the climb looks too hard right now. But if you join my group, I can guarantee you a clear path to the top of B class. Sounds interesting, Shinji said with a half smile. But I'll pass. He rejected her offer with no hesitation, no excuses, and absolutely no interest. That's because the Blizzard group had no idea that both rookie S-class heroes were just in his room. Chapter 36, Hellstorm. Alert! The host rejected Fubuki's invitation. Reward, 10 contribution points. That was the last straw for Fubuki. She snapped. Eyelashes. Mountain Ape. Teach him a lesson. Make sure he can't work as a hero ever again. She gave up on talking and went straight to action, barking the order without hesitation. Yes, ma'am. Eyelashes and Mountain Ape had already disliked Shinji for a while. The moment she gave the order, they sprang into motion. Mountain Ape charged in, fists like wrecking balls, while Eyelashes lunged with a pair of long, sharp tweezers, supposedly for eyelashes, but very clearly repurposed as weapons. Despite their cosmetic appearance, Eyelashes' tweezers were designed to cut through steel. There was nothing delicate about them. Shinji didn't respond. He just sighed. He had thought he'd been polite enough, but clearly, some people didn't understand anything short of force. Still, this wasn't a total loss. Beating up the second and third ranked B-class heroes might earn him some decent points. He didn't dodge or brace. He just stood there, watching as a punch and a pair of tweezers closed in on his face. In the next moment, both attacks passed straight through him. Eyelashes and Mountain Ape were stunned. For a second, it felt like they were hitting a ghost. Nothing connected. No resistance, no impact, just empty air. Before they could react, Shinji grabbed the backs of their collars. With a lazy flick of the wrist, he tossed them both out of the building like sacks of trash. His body was more than 20 times stronger than a normal person's, and with the added bonus of Hashirama cells, flinging a couple of grown men was like beating a sack of puppies. That came out wrong. Fubuki's eyes went wide, her confident expression cracking. She hadn't expected Eyelashes and Mountain Ape to go down that easily. Shinji was just a rookie, 9th place in B class, nothing special on paper. So why did it look like they were completely outmatched? You two started it. Don't come cry now, Shinji said calmly, brushing imaginary dust from his shoulder. So you're getting in my way, too, now? Fubuki's tone turned ice cold. Instead of backing down, she stepped forward. Shinji was honestly confused. Who was getting in whose way? From the beginning, it was the Blizzard group who'd come after him. But before he could speak, Fubuki raised her hand. A wave of pressure surged through the air. As one of the most powerful espers in the Hero Association, Fubuki had total control over psychokinesis. This time, she wasn't holding anything back. The atmosphere around her twisted violently. Air currents howled as they whipped into a storm, lifting debris and broken pavement high into the air. Within seconds, the entire 100-meter radius had turned into a whirling vortex of chaos and dust, centered entirely on her. This was why she was called Blizzard of Hell. When she got serious, it looked like the gates of hell had been thrown wide open. Don't say I didn't warn you. You might want to tone it down a bit. Shinji glanced at the storm of flying debris with a calm, almost bored look. Normally, Saitama would be next door gaming with Vaccine Man, and if things got too noisy, they'd probably barge in and complain. Still, that didn't seem to be a concern for Fubuki. She had no intention of holding back. In fact, she ramped things up even further. By the way, this ability doesn't work on me. Just letting you know so you don't waste your energy, Shinji added with what could almost be called a friendly tone. He truly was trying to be considerate, but to Fubuki, it sounded completely like mockery. You're looking down on me? You'll regret this. With the storm whipped to its absolute peak, Fubuki released it all in a single, focused burst. But worry not. I'll leave you alive. Hellstorm. The wind exploded outward at her command, roaring through the hallway and slamming toward Shinji like a battering ram made of swirling chaos. As the force tore through the corridor, Fubuki was certain it had blasted him away. She didn't hesitate, she doubled down, tightening the raging winds and debris into a crushing vortex. Her power condensed into a violent spiral designed to tear through armor, skin, and bone. Inside that kind of maelstrom, there would be no air, no light, and no escape. Everything inside would be pulverized. She hadn't wanted to go that far, but if he insisted on being defiant, then she had no choice. Being the top-ranked B-class hero wasn't just a title. It was her identity, her pride. Anyone who refused to submit wasn't just rude, they were a threat. And threats needed to be eliminated. No exceptions. Are you done playing around? This little game ends now. The voice came from right behind her. Shinji stood there, completely unharmed. Not a scratch on him, not even a wrinkle in his clothes. He might as well have just walked out of a quiet cafe instead of a hellish cyclone. With Kamui and Flying Thunder God in his arsenal, something like Fubuki's Hellstorm couldn't touch him even if she tried all day. To him, this wasn't a deadly duel, it was child's play. Fubuki's fury, her grand declarations, her need to dominate the B-class, it all felt like some overblown game of make-believe. Fubuki's eyes widened. Her body froze. That voice, behind her? She spun around fast, heart pounding, only to find him standing within arm's reach. Way too close. Panic flared. She tried to leap back, to get distance, to re-establish control, but it was already too late. In that instant, Shinji activated Kamui. With her relatively fragile body, there was no way Fubuki could resist the gravitational pull of Kamui. Just as Shinji was about to send her into the Kamui dimension for a little timeout, an unexpected interruption dropped from the sky. Really? You chose now to show up. Shinji immediately sensed the intruder. He'd already predicted that the Monster Association would send someone his way eventually, of course, it just had to be now. There was no helping it. He casually tossed Fubuki aside like she was luggage and shifted focus to the more pressing threat, the monster that had just arrived. Fubuki remained clueless about what had just happened. 1 second, she was facing Shinji's Kamui, and the next, she was thrown to the side like a sack of pillows. Before she could process anything, a humanoid mantis crashed down from the sky and landed heavily beside both of them. The impact shook the ground, and Fubuki flinched hard, falling onto her but in a helpless duck sit. Alert! The host has exchanged for Rasengan. Cost, 50 points. Remaining points, 370. Alert! Host has exchanged for physique plus 260. Cost, 260 points. Remaining points, 110. Alert! Host has exchanged for Hashirama Cells X11. Cost, 110 points. Remaining points, 0. Seeing the situation escalate, Shinji didn't waste a second. He dumped all his contribution points into upgrades, only ever spending them when he knew a fight was coming. Physique plus 260. Hashirama Cells plus 11. Current physique, 478. Current Hashirama Cells, 20. Just as the system notifications finished, one final alert popped up. Alert! Host has reached 20 Hashirama Cells. Reward unlocked, Wood Style, Wood Clone Jutsu. Shinji's eyes lit up slightly. As expected, hitting a certain threshold in Hashirama Cells unlocked new Wood Style techniques. Ahem. My name is Dash. The mantis-like monster had just started its dramatic villain monologue when Shinji moved like a blur. With a lazy swing of his Crimson Knight blade, he cleanly lopped off the monster's head before it could say another word. Alert! The host has defeated the tiger-level monster Kamakuri. Reward, 20 contribution points. 20 points, not bad. That meant the mantis had been on the stronger side for a tiger-level threat. Unfortunately for it, it had the misfortune of picking Shinji as a target. Kamakuri's speech ended with a wet thud. That was a monster. Fubuki mumbled, still seated awkwardly on the ground, her legs folded underneath her in a dazed, duck-like pose. The hell just happened? Chapter 37, Susanoo slays the Beast King. It's not over yet. Shinji ignored Fubuki completely, his eyes fixed on something far off in the distance. You just now. Fubuki started to speak, trying to process everything that had just happened, but an explosion interrupted her. Boom! A building nearby exploded into fragments, and from the cloud of smoke emerged a massive, fully armored gorilla. Its heavy footfalls cracked the pavement beneath its feet, and its glowing red eyes locked onto its next prey. Fubuki stared, frozen. The past few minutes had left her too stunned to even get off the ground. She turned her head instinctively, expecting Shinji to be at her side, only to find he had vanished without a trace. In truth, he'd just been ambushed. Beneath the surface, Ground Dragon had grabbed at Shinji's leg, trying to drag him underground. Rather than resist, Shinji simply let himself be pulled down, eager to handle the pest on its own turf. Ground Dragon turned out to be nothing more than a giant mole-like creature, and he didn't stand a chance. Alert! The host has defeated a tiger-level monster, Ground Dragon. Reward, 20 contribution points. Alert! The host has defeated a tiger-level monster, Frogman. Reward, 10 contribution points. Alert! The host has defeated a tiger-level monster, Sludgerous. Reward, 10 contribution points. While underground, Shinji also cleaned up 2 other tiger-level monsters, Frogman and Sludgerous, who were lurking nearby as backup. All 3 had been dispatched by the Monster Association. Meanwhile, on the surface, Fubuki was starting to panic. With Shinji nowhere in sight and the armored gorilla charging straight at her, she thought she'd been abandoned. Left alone to face this monster, she gritted her teeth and forced herself to stand. She had already burned through most of her energy earlier trying to subdue Shinji, but now she had no choice. Bracing herself, she raised her hand and prepared another psychic blast. My target isn't you. Get out of the way. The armored gorilla's voice boomed like a tank engine, but it didn't slow down. It charged headfirst at her. Fubuki summoned a wall of earth with her telekinesis, but her power was too drained. The barrier crumbled the moment the armored gorilla smashed into it, and the shockwave sent her flying backward. Gah! She slammed into the ground with a thud, breath knocked from her lungs. Thankfully, her wall had absorbed most of the hit, sparing her from serious injury. Thud. 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 Heavy footsteps shook the ground around her. Fubuki groaned and lifted her head. What she saw drained the color from her face. Another monster was approaching. A towering humanoid lion with thick muscles, golden fur, and claws that could shred steel. He dwarfed even the armored gorilla. Her heart sank. Another one? And this one looked even stronger. What was this place? A monster breeding ground? How were so many powerful beasts showing up back to back? A woman? Where's our target? The Beast King growled, eyes narrowing at the sight of Fubuki. Just now, Ground Dragon grabbed the target. Not sure where he went, Armored Gorilla replied. Don't tell me that guy ran off to take the credit himself, Beast King muttered, visibly annoyed. The 2 monsters stood there casually chatting in front of Fubuki, completely ignoring her as if she didn't even matter. Cold sweat trickled down her back. She had nowhere to run. No energy left. No backup. Just when it looked like she was done for. I take it, you're looking for me? Shinji appeared in front of her, calm as ever. There he is! The target showed up on his own. Beast King instantly recognized the red-eyed youth as the one Dr. Genus had been after. This place is a bit dangerous. You'd better hide for now, Shinji said calmly. Without waiting for Fubuki's reply, he sent her into the Kamui dimension. Sure, a dramatic Princess Carrie might have fit the moment, cradling the damsel before the big battle, but Shinji wasn't in the mood to carry someone around while fighting 2 demon-level threats. This method was cleaner. Fubuki would be completely safe, tucked away in the Kamui space, and he'd be free to fight without distractions. She could spend that time cooling off and doing some quiet reflection, maybe even reconsider her whole superiority complex. The only drawback was that, with someone inside Kamui, he couldn't use his intangibility. But against opponents like Beast King and Iron Gorilla, he wouldn't need it. Saving a damsel in distress? Don't make me laugh. That'll just make your death even more pathetic. Beast King sneered, aura flaring as his golden mane rose like flames. Let me show you the power of the Beast King. Lion Slash. He lunged forward with brutal speed, swinging his claws in a wide arc. 5 shining slashes of energy tore through the air, slicing apart the buildings behind Shinji like they were made of cardboard. But Shinji didn't even break a sweat. He dodged easily, sidestepping each strike with sharp, fluid movements and precise awareness. His reflexes were tuned to the finest degree. Ugh! Beast King roared in frustration, swinging again and again, each strike wilder than the last. Iron Gorilla kept his distance, wisely choosing not to get involved. Beast King was doing the heavy lifting, and considering his temper, jumping in might just get him sliced by accident. The barrage continued. Blow after blow. Still, not a single hit landed. Beast King's fury boiled over. You won't get away. I'll kill you. This is survival of the fittest. Ha ha ha. His muscles swelled grotesquely, chains and restraints snapping as raw strength erupted from his body. His coat shredded off him entirely, revealing his beast-like physique in full. Lion Slash Meteor Shower. He leapt into the air and unleashed a violent downpour of claw strikes, each one a blur, coming from every direction like a storm of blades. Beast King, we were supposed to capture him alive, Iron Gorilla mumbled from the sidelines, trying to rein him in. But Beast King was lost to madness, and Iron Gorilla wasn't stupid enough to argue further. This time, though, Shinji didn't move. He had no intention of dodging. Why? Because Susanoo. In an instant, a massive, blue skeletal ribcage materialized around him, forming a shield against the onslaught. This was Susanoo's initial form, but it didn't stay that way for long. Driven by Shinji's will, it evolved rapidly. The skeletal structure expanded, arms taking shape, then musculature formed across the framework. Chakra pathways lit up like glowing veins, and finally, the armor wrapped over it all, covering the giant in its radiant, energy-cloaked robe. Originally, Susanoo was a technique fueled by chakra, the divine defense granted by the Mangekyo Sharingan, known across the shinobi world as the power of the gods. But the system had modified it for Shinji, transforming it into a manifestation of his spiritual energy. No longer just a visual technique or illusion of power, this was a solid, crushing force made real by the system's rewriting of the rules. With over 400 points in physique and a solid reserve of Hashirama cells, summoning Susanoo was practically effortless for Shinji. Within seconds, it had advanced into its second form, a towering partial body standing between 20 and 30 meters tall, armed with 2 massive katanas, weapons native to this stage. The second stage of Susanoo was ideal. It offered a perfect balance of offense and defense, while keeping chakra, or in Shinji's case, spiritual energy, consumption at a manageable level. What? Beast King had been fully expecting to rip Shinji to shreds with brute force. Instead, what now stood before him was a colossal warrior wrapped in ethereal armor, dwarfing even his own monstrous frame. Before he could process what was happening, Shinji made his move. Susanoo's twin blades descended like thunderbolts, cutting through the air and closing in too fast for Beast King to react. He froze for a split second, wide-eyed, and then his enormous body was sliced cleanly into 3 pieces. Alert! The host has defeated the demon-level monster Beast King. Reward, 45 contribution points. Beast King had been a peak demon-level threat, one of the strongest under Dr. Genus's command. But even he couldn't withstand Susanoo's might. Shinji then turned, slowly, to face the remaining monster. Iron Gorilla stood frozen, every fiber of his oversized body locked in place. Beast King, ranked second in the House of Evolution and leagues stronger than him, had just been torn apart like paper. And now, that same unstoppable human was looking right at him. Without hesitation, Iron Gorilla dropped into a deep Dajiza, slamming his massive fists and forehead into the ground with a loud thud. I was way out of line earlier. I sincerely apologize. Please spare me, I'll tell you everything. Gone was the calm, slow-speaking tough guy. In truth, his dramatic speech had always been an act, part of his image. Now, he didn't even dare form a full sentence. Every word came out fast, clipped, terrified that even a moment's pause would earn him a blade to the face. Seeing the surrender, Shinji deactivated Susanoo. The towering warrior of energy shimmered and faded, leaving only him standing amid the destruction. Who sent you? His tone was flat. He acted as if he didn't already know. It was. Keep it short. Shinji didn't need a full backstory. He knew this type. Once they got started, they'd ramble on all the way back to Dr. Genus's childhood trauma. He cut that off before it began. Right. Right, in short, our boss, Dr. Genus, is very interested in your body. He wants to use you for his research, so he sent us to capture you. Iron Gorilla managed to compress what was probably a 5-minute speech into a single, panicked sentence. Got it. You're done here. And with that, Shinji vanished. In reality, he had slipped into the Kamui dimension to check on Fubuki and see how she was handling her little timeout. Chapter 38, How Not to Manhandle a Waifu. When Fubuki first got dragged into the Kamui dimension, it felt like reality itself had betrayed her. One moment, she was staring into Shinji's eyes, eyes that pulled at her with an invisible force, like some kind of gravitational field, and the next, her vision went black. Her body lurched, the world tilted, and it felt like she'd been tossed into a blender of nausea and disorientation. When her senses finally returned, she found herself in a bizarre, sunless world with no wind, no sky, no warmth. Just silence. A dead realm made entirely of towering stone pillars stretching in every direction, each one identical to the next. The kind of place that whispered you don't belong here. What is this place? Her voice barely echoed. The stillness was suffocating. The unknown was terrifying. And now, dropped into a world so cold and alien, her instincts screamed that something was deeply wrong. A chill crept up her spine as her mind tried to process the situation. This had to be Shinji's doing. Who else could have dumped her into this nightmare? But how had he done it? And more importantly, what was this place? No answers came. She was completely alone. With nothing else to rely on, she picked a direction and started walking. Her heels echoed faintly on the stone as she moved, but the scenery never changed. No walls. No sky. No edge. Just an eternal maze of stone columns in every direction. The deeper she walked, the more hopeless it felt. Is he planning to keep me trapped here forever? Eventually, she gave up and sat on the cold ground. Her earlier psychic barrage, plus the hit from the Iron Gorilla, had drained her. Her muscles ached. Her head throbbed. She tried to convince herself she just needed a break, that she'd start moving again once she recovered a little. But part of her already knew the truth. She was stuck. Damn it, not only did he get in my way, he even locked me up in this place. She muttered bitterly, voice low as her frustration simmered beneath the surface. She hugged her knees, unsure whether she was more angry at Shinji or herself. That's when a voice echoed through the stone air. Hey, I can hear you, you know. It's rude to talk behind someone's back. Her head jerked up. Shinji was standing right in front of her, as if he'd materialized out of nowhere. She sprang to her feet at once, dusting herself off and adjusting her posture in a single motion. The tired, scowling mess vanished in an instant. Her signature cold, composed aura returned like armor snapping into place. So it really was you who put me in here, huh? Her voice was sharp now. Controlled. Yeah. I just thought you could use some time to think. If you still haven't figured anything out, I don't mind giving you another couple of days. Shinji's tone was calm, almost casual, like this was all just a minor inconvenience. Not exactly the attitude of someone who just locked her in a dimensional prison. You were the one who got in my way. Why should I be the one doing the reflecting? She shot back, eyes narrowing. Shinji raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. No, seriously, how does your brain even function? You and I had never even met. I wasn't interfering with anything. You just showed up out of nowhere and picked a fight. He sighed, exasperated, and ran a hand down his face like he genuinely couldn't believe this was a conversation he was having. You want to surpass me. That already means you're getting in my way. Fubuki didn't even hesitate. The words came out sharp, cold, and without an ounce of doubt. So you're talking about rankings? Relax. I'm not planning to squat in B class just to steal your number 1 spot. I'll be moving up soon. Shinji's response was cool as ever. But then he decided to poke the hornet's nest a little. Actually, now that we're on the topic, why haven't you moved up to A class yet? You've been stuck as B class rank 1 for how long? Doesn't that get boring? Fubuki fell silent. I have no obligation to answer that. Her face stayed perfectly composed, but inside, Shinji had just stepped squarely on one of her most sensitive nerves. The reason she'd never moved up to A class was painfully simple: she couldn't reach the top. That position, A class rank 1, was locked down by Sweet Mask, and as long as he refused to promote himself to S class, nobody else stood a chance of claiming that spot. Including her. Sure, she could probably land somewhere around rank 6 in A class. She had the ability. But that wasn't enough for her. Not even close. Being B class rank 1 meant more to her than being just another face in the upper tier. Because 1 mattered. It was the only time she'd ever gotten to see a number above her sisters. Tatsumaki was S class rank 2. And even if it was petty, even if it didn't really mean anything, 1 was bigger than 2. More than anything, it was the first number 1 she had ever achieved in her entire life. It wasn't just a rank. It was validation. So you don't want to answer, huh? But with that mindset, you're not going to grow. You'll barely survive. Shinji's tone lost its casual edge. It sharpened like a knife. Heroes exist to fight evil, not to satisfy their own selfish desires. That's not me saying it, by the way. That's from S-Class rank 15, Saitama. He made sure to credit the quote. He wasn't pretending to be some selfless idealist. Honestly, he didn't have the moral clarity of someone like Saitama. He didn't see himself as a symbol of justice or an icon of virtue. He was just a regular guy, stuck in this strange world, trying to make sense of it and get stronger along the way. Still, that alone gave him enough perspective to call out the things that felt wrong. You're just the big fish in a tiny, shallow puddle. Surrounding yourself with weaker people doesn't make you stronger, it makes you soft. You couldn't handle Beast King. You couldn't even stand against Iron Gorilla. Do you really think your so-called team could have done better? Shinji paused for a moment before raising a brow. You don't want to move to A class because deep down, you're scared. Not of the work. Not of the missions. You're scared of not being the best anymore. And instead of facing that fear, you take it out on rookies. You bully new heroes into submission and call it leadership. That's not just pathetic, it's dangerous. And this Blizzard group you're so proud of? It's not a squad. It's not an organization. It's a glorified tea party with a superiority complex. His words hit harder than any physical blow. One after another, they chipped at her pride, cracking that carefully polished image she projected to the world. But it was that last line, that final insult, that broke the dam. Calling the Blizzard group a child's game? Fubuki's blood boiled. Her fists clenched. Her whole body tense like a cornered animal ready to strike. "Shut up!" Fubuki snapped, fury exploding from her throat. Instinct took over. She reached for her psychic powers to crush him, to silence him, to stop the humiliation. But nothing happened. The moment she reached outward, she realized it. This space offered her nothing. No debris to hurl, no weight to manipulate, not even a single pebble to lift. Just empty air and a void of stone pillars. Her powers were as useless here as a lighter in a vacuum. "So now you're just lashing out?" Shinji's tone was ice. He stared at her like she was a tantrum-throwing child. "Look at you. Right now, can you even touch me? Go find a mirror. Figure yourself out." I said shut up. She already lost it. Her eyes burned, her hands trembled, her control completely gone. With no psychic power to fall back on, she lunged forward out of sheer rage, pulling a small utility knife from God knows where and swinging it at him with no technique, no thought, just raw desperation. Tears welled up in her eyes. Not from pain, but from something far worse. Shinji's words had landed like bombs, digging into the parts of her that still hurt the most. And now it was all she could do to breathe through the weight of that truth. But her wild swing didn't even come close. With one hand, Shinji effortlessly plucked the knife from her grasp. With the other, he clenched his fist and drove it straight into her face. Sucker punch. The blow wasn't flashy. It didn't carry a blast wave or shake the air. But it knocked her back like a broken kite, her body sailing through the void before hitting the ground hard. Shinji didn't always take it easy just because someone was crying. Lily hadn't tried to stab him, after all. This was different. Still, he'd pulled his punch. If he hadn't, there wouldn't be much left of her face. Fubuki's physical stats were barely above average civilian level, since her entire fighting power came from her psychic abilities. And in here, she had none. Now she lay flat, limbs splayed, eyes wide but empty. She didn't even reach up to touch her cheek, already turning red and swollen. That punch hadn't just knocked her off her feet. It cracked the foundation she stood on, her pride, her illusions, her certainty that she was in control. Alert! Host has defeated B-class hero Blizzard of Hell. Reward, 20 contribution points. Looks like you still don't understand your situation. Cool your head for a while. Without another glance, Shinji turned and stepped out of the Kamui dimension, leaving her behind. Alone. Chapter 39, The Bald Pervert. Back when Fubuki had unleashed her so-called Hellstorm. Vaccine Man had just wrapped up a gaming session and was stretching lazily in the living room. He glanced toward the window, frowning at the distant ruckus outside. Something's going on out there. Did you hear that? That kind of stuff happens all the time. Don't worry about it. Let's do another round. You only won that last one because I got distracted. Saitama had just taken an embarrassing L and wasn't in the mood to investigate mysterious booms or airborne debris. His pride was on the line, and all he wanted was a redemption match. All right. Vaccine Man reluctantly dropped the topic. After all, Shinji lived right next door. If something was going down, it wasn't their problem, since Shinji could handle it. Probably better than either of them. Sure enough, even though the sound of chaos outside got louder for a while, it didn't last long. The noise faded, peace returned, and the two of them quickly forgot about the whole thing. Beep, beep, beep. At that very moment, Iron Gorilla was hunched over, quietly transmitting data through the microsatellite embedded in his brain. A direct link to Dr. Genus. He assumed Shinji had left already, so he tried to send a full report before anyone noticed. Then, clack. Shinji appeared again out of nowhere. Startled, Iron Gorilla slammed his skull hatch shut, snapping the compartment over the microsatellite like he was hiding snacks from a teacher. A cold metallic sweat trickled down his body as his systems screamed in panic. Shinji gave him a blank look, then suddenly let out a sigh. You tell me, when a woman's being unbelievably stubborn, how do you get her to realize she's wrong? The question dropped from his mouth like a philosophical bomb. Iron Gorilla blinked. He had absolutely no idea what Shinji was talking about, but he wasn't taking any chances. Instantly, he dropped into a deep dejiza. I am just a dumb gorilla, sir. I know nothing of women. A pause. Is she beautiful? Shinji just stared at him for a second, then looked away. He didn't bother pushing the matter. After a short silence, he disappeared once again, back into the Kamui dimension. Inside Kamui space, the atmosphere had shifted completely. Fubuki was no longer sprawled on the ground. She now sat curled up, knees hugged to her chest, chin resting against her arms. Her face had gone pale. Her expression was blank. She looked like someone who just had her world quietly dismantled, piece by piece. Her psychic storm was gone. Her pride, gone with it. Shinji observed her quietly. You cooled off yet? Or do you want to stew a little longer? I want to leave. Her voice was faint, almost a whisper. No trace of her earlier defiance remained. Without a word, Shinji brought her back into the real world. The moment she returned, the smell of blood hit her nose. The first thing she saw was Beast King's body, what was left of it, split clean into 3 jagged pieces. Not far from him, Iron Gorilla remained on his knees, forehead pressed to the ground like a man begging for his life. Fubuki stood frozen. These 2 monsters had been terrifying. She felt utterly helpless just moments ago. And yet, they're already dead? Not only had Shinji not run away, he had wiped the floor with them. Alone. A strange tightness formed in her chest, her pride clashing violently with reality. Just then, footsteps approached. Master Shinji, what happened here? Genos arrived, his usual calm expression vanishing the second he saw the carnage. His eyes scanned the ruined street, the scattered bodies, the half-toppled buildings. What happened? Fubuki's eyes widened. That's Genos, the S-class hero? And more importantly, did he just call Shinji Master? A cascade of revelations hit Fubuki like a storm. Just moments ago, her spirit had been crushed, but now, something had shifted. The dull haze in her eyes cleared, replaced by a faint glimmer of curiosity as she quietly stared at Shinji. I think some guy named Genos has his eye on me, Shinji said casually, scratching his head. Sent a bunch of monsters to try and nab me, but, well, that's taken care of. Genos narrowed his eyes. Genos, could it be the same Dr. Genos from the House of Evolution? Shinji gave a light nod. That's the one. Sounds like you know him too. I've heard plenty, Genos replied grimly. They're not just a research lab, they're a full-blown cult. Their whole goal is to create a new world through forced evolution. If Genos is interested in your body, it's not going to end with one attack. He'll come back. Probably harder next time. Shinji sighed. Yeah? Then maybe he should have gone after Saitama instead. Now that would have been a fun research subject. At that moment, Iron Gorilla finally spoke up, his voice trembling. Actually, our boss did have 2 targets. One was you. The other was, a bald pervert who doesn't wear clothes. Bald pervert. Shinji froze. Then nearly doubled over laughing. There was absolutely no doubt who the so-called pervert was, Saitama. During a past scuffle, Genos had accidentally incinerated Saitama's outfit mid-fight, and for a solid 5 minutes, their beloved hero had been chasing monsters in nothing but his gloves and boots. Truly unfortunate timing. Shinji paused to offer Saitama a silent moment of condolence. Meanwhile, Genos had been watching Iron Gorilla like a hawk. Now, his tone turned sharper as he began probing with quiet intensity. You're a modified human, aren't you? Has the House of Evolution been manufacturing cyborgs for 4 years now? Are there others like you? Was your organization responsible for the destruction of City D or City G? Genos' voice was calm, but the palm of his hand had already opened, glowing with the light of his internal cannon. For years ago, his entire town and his family had been annihilated by a rogue cyborg. That moment had defined the path he walked to this day. And now, if this gorilla turned out to be connected. Iron Gorilla dropped into a low bow, visibly trembling. I swear I don't know how long the boss has been making cyborgs. I just know I'm the only combat-type model produced under the House of Evolution. He knew resisting was useless. And honestly, between Shinji and Genos, he didn't stand a chance. Genos held his aim for a few seconds longer, then slowly powered down. Judging by the gorilla's jittery posture and his simplistic manner of speech, he didn't seem like the mastermind. Just a cog in the machine. Understood. I'll verify the rest later. A brief silence followed. Then Fubuki finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. Shinji, do you know any other S-class heroes? It was the first time she had spoken since returning from Kamui space. Genos, who hadn't even noticed her standing there until now, turned and gave a polite nod. Seeing she seemed to know Shinji, he introduced himself properly. I'm Master Shinji's disciple. My name is Genos. Disciple. Fubuki's eyes widened. An S-class hero, calling a B-class hero his teacher? That made no sense. It shouldn't make sense. But Genos didn't seem the least bit sarcastic or confused. He wasn't just saying it, he meant it. Completely and sincerely. Genos hadn't been active in the Hero Association for long and wasn't yet familiar with every ranking. He didn't recognize Fubuki as B-class rank 1, Hell's Blizzard. He simply glanced at her and asked with genuine curiosity, "You know Master Shinji?" Fubuki opened her mouth, then stopped. She hesitated. The truth was, not only were they not close, she had literally come here today to intimidate him into joining the Blizzard group. And then gotten caught up in a complete mess with the House of Evolution. If Genos knew the full story, he might see her as an enemy. Before she could answer, Shinji spoke on her behalf. We're not close, but you could call her a guest. She came knocking earlier with a few others, just happened to get caught up in this mess. Fubuki's breath caught in her throat. He was covering for her? He could have just told the truth, could have humiliated her right then and there. But instead, he'd brushed it off like nothing happened. She glanced at him, unsure of what to think. Genos, meanwhile, had already shifted his attention back to the topic at hand. Speaking of the House of Evolution. Master Shinji, since they've made you a target, I believe it's best we strike first. Eradicate the threat at its root. His eyes narrowed. First the mosquito monster. Now these cyborgs. If we don't end this now, they'll just keep coming. You're right, Shinji replied. We should go on the offensive. Then he turned back to Fubuki. But before that, his eyes locked onto hers. Fubuki. I assume today's events were enough for you to learn a lesson? Fubuki? Genos tilted his head, the name triggering something. He quickly pulled out his phone and ran a search on the Hero Association's public site. A few taps later. B-class rank 1 hero, Blizzard of Hell. Genos blinked, piecing it together. So that was why Master Shinji had said she came with others. And this was the leader of the Blizzard group, the one infamous for suppressing promising new heroes in B-class. His expression darkened with mild amusement. So you're the head of the Blizzard group? You even tried to suppress Master? Then he glanced at the wrecked battlefield behind them, the pieces of Beast King still smoking on the ground, and Iron Gorilla still kneeling, trembling. And in the end, you were the one who had to be saved by him? His lips curled into a quiet smirk. Not cruel, but definitely not sympathetic either. Chapter 40, Explanation and Admission. Natural-born espers were a rare breed in this world, and most of them, Fubuki included, were prideful and often carried themselves with a sense of self-importance. She had always dreamed of being at the top, of being number one. But there was always her. That woman, her older sister, was the immovable obstacle in her way. Tatsumaki, the strongest Esper alive. If I hadn't been born with a sister like her, maybe I could have been number one, just once. Inside Shinji's home, the three of them, Shinji, Fubuki, and Genos, sat around a table. It was clear from Fubuki's expression and posture that she had come to explain herself, and to apologize. When I reached the top of B class, I had this idea. What if I just stayed number one? I could gather everyone ranked below me into a team. If we worked together, if we united our strength, maybe I could someday surpass my sister, who always fights alone. She didn't hold anything back, openly laying out her motivations and the logic behind everything she'd done until now. You're talking about Tatsumaki, the one ranked second in S class, right? Genos asked. Fubuki gave a small nod. That's right. But if your goal is to surpass her, shouldn't you be aiming for the top of A class at least? Genos looked puzzled. Even if you're not on her level, you've maintained the B class number one spot for quite a while. Reaching the top of A class doesn't seem impossible. It was a fair point. The gap between the B class and the S class was massive. Even if she managed to recruit every capable hero in B class, excluding Shinji, it still wouldn't be enough to beat someone like Tatsumaki. That kind of strategy was just wishful thinking. You're underestimating A class, Fubuki said with a dry, self-deprecating smile. With my power, I could break into the top few, sure. But taking the number one spot? That's not happening. She leaned back slightly, her tone turning heavier. S-class hero Atomic Samurai has 3 disciples. Ian is A-class rank 2. Okametachi is rank 3. Bushidrill is rank 4. None of them have ever beaten A-class rank 1, Sweet Mask, which is why they haven't moved up to S-class. Her voice lowered. This world is filled with people who make no sense. My sister, Sweet Mask, King, Blast, they're all freaks among freaks. Genos stayed silent but gave a slow, understanding nod. In his mind, Shinji belonged in that same category. Since joining the Hero Association, he'd learned the truth about Shinji's strength. The official records on disaster-level threats made it even clearer. The most recent Dragon-level incident had been caused by Vaccine Man. And now, Vaccine Man was practically Shinji's follower, obedient and loyal. That kind of power was something even S-class heroes couldn't always count on. With where I'm at right now, I can't go any higher on my own. That's why I created the Blizzard Group. Her head dipped slightly, hands resting neatly on her thighs. Her voice was soft and sincere. I know what I did to you was wrong. I got too fixated on staying number one in B class. It's the only place where I felt like I could be first at anything. When I saw you climbing the ranks, reaching number 4, I panicked. I thought, either I bring you into the fold, or I get rid of you as a threat. I'm sorry. She remained in that position, quiet and humble, her guilt written all over her face. So, you won't be pulling that kind of stunt on other new heroes again, right? Shinji asked evenly. If you're ready to drop that mindset, then I'll accept your apology. I won't do it again, Fubuki replied quickly. I hope you'll forgive me. Shinji gave a small nod, visibly satisfied. Good. Knowing your mistake and being willing to change, that's what makes a good kid. There's nothing wrong with forming the Blizzard Group, Shinji said calmly. As long as you're not forcing anyone to join or using violence to suppress others, I don't see a problem. Even if you end up dominating the entire B-class ranking, as long as everyone joins willingly, I won't object. Understood, Fubuki gave a quiet, obedient nod. As for your decision to stay at the top of B-class, that's your call. I've got no interest in criticizing it. And don't worry, I'm not here to compete with you for that spot. I've got my eyes on moving up. Your position's safe from me. By all accounts, Fubuki should have moved up to A-class a long time ago. Staying in B-class didn't benefit her career in any real way. It offered no prestige, no real recognition, just an illusion of victory that cushioned her pride. But it was her choice, a personal decision, and Shinji saw no reason to judge her for it. I. Ding dong. Just as Fubuki started to speak, the doorbell rang, cutting her off. Moments later, the front door swung open and in walked Saitama, completely unbothered by the fact that he hadn't been invited in. Yo, Shinji. I'm done sparring with Vaccine Man, ready for my rematch. He declared with that same confident, laid-back grin, like a guy who just won a prize at a claw machine. Vaccine Man trailed behind him, looking considerably less enthusiastic. That bald head. Fubuki's eyes widened in an instant. That was Saitama, the famously unassuming S-class hero. She instantly recognized him and was momentarily stunned. She hadn't expected another S-class hero to appear, much less one who acted this casual around Shinji. And then, Vaccine Man? That name jolted something in her memory. He was the cause of a recent dragon-level disaster. The reports had been murky, but it was widely believed that either Saitama alone or Saitama and Shinji together had brought him down. Fubuki had always leaned toward the first explanation. If she believed Shinji had taken part in defeating a dragon-level threat, she never would have tried to challenge him in the first place. But now, Vaccine Man was alive. Standing right there. Not rampaging through the city, not causing chaos, but walking into Shinji's house like a grumpy houseguest. Fubuki's brain practically short-circuited. You're really Vaccine Man? She asked, unable to stop herself. Vaccine Man, still simmering from being thrashed repeatedly by Saitama, looked even more irritable than usual. His sharp features and permanently hostile expression didn't help. Yes, I am. Got a problem with that? His intense glare, already scary under normal circumstances, now carried the weight of wounded pride and bruised ego. Fubuki instinctively tensed. That kind of pressure could break a weaker person's composure in seconds. But he had no interest in wasting words on someone he barely recognized. Turning away, he muttered to Shinji like it was the most natural thing in the world. Can I borrow some money? I want to buy a new game, something I can use for training. He was dead serious. After losing over and over again to Saitama, Vaccine Man had become obsessed with improvement. He couldn't wrap his mind around it. How could a bald, unimpressive-looking human beat him so completely? Fubuki could only gape in disbelief. A dragon-level monster, asking Shinji for cash, like some lazy roommate wanting an allowance for gaming? Her entire understanding of power, dominance, and hierarchy shattered. Chapter 41, Subjugating the House of Evolution. Alright, 10,000 yen should be enough for you. Shinji casually pulled a 10,000 yen bill from his pocket and handed it to Vaccine Man, not thinking twice about the amount. Even though he had a bank card, he preferred carrying some cash around for convenience. After all, he made decent money. Between monster subjugation rewards from the association and his modest monthly salary, finances weren't really a problem anymore. I think it's enough? I don't really know, Vaccine Man muttered, clearly confused. He had no clue about the cost of video games or what yen was worth. 10,000's more than enough. You could grab a whole stack of games with that, Saitama chimed in. Got it, I'll go buy them now. Vaccine Man turned to leave but hesitated, spinning back around. By the way, am I allowed to leave the restricted zone now? You can. I'll come with you, Shinji replied and followed him out the door. Moments later, Shinji walked back in. Fubuki inside the house was just starting to observe the house and that bald head when Shinji returned in no time. Did he even leave the apartment? Didn't you go out shopping with that monster? Fubuki asked, raising an eyebrow. Yeah, I did. I sent a clone with him, Shinji said with a nod, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. Clone. Fubuki blinked, clearly taken aback. Did he just say clone? Yeah. He didn't bother elaborating, which left Fubuki even more surprised. A clone? Just what kind of ability was that? Earlier, Shinji had used the wood-style, wood-clone technique, unlocked after progressing far enough with Hashirama cells to create a perfect wooden clone. It looked just like him and had decent combat ability too. It could even use Kamui and summon Susanoo, making it an incredibly versatile backup. By the way, I've never seen this person before. Is she your friend? Saitama asked, finally noticing Fubuki. No, this is our first meeting. She's Blizzard of Hell, number 1 in B class, Shinji explained. Oh. Never heard of her, but she looks kinda strong, Saitama said with his usual blank tone. Fubuki stayed silent, still trying to process everything. This guy had Genos, an S-class hero, calling him master and talking to Saitama like an old friend. How could a B-class hero manage that? The more she observed, the more she realized she had underestimated Shinji. But what truly dominated her thoughts at that moment was one overwhelming desire: she wanted to be part of this group. Fubuki. Fubuki? Shinji called her twice before she snapped out of it. Ah, what is it? She asked quickly, a bit embarrassed. You zoned out. Saitama was talking to you, Shinji said with a faint smile. Oh, sorry. I didn't hear clearly just now. Could you repeat it? Fubuki asked, offering a quick apology. I was just saying, earlier, when I was playing games, I heard a lot of noise outside. Were you fighting with Shinji? Saitama asked again, his expression as calm as ever. Fubuki was caught off guard. Considering how close he seemed to be with Shinji and the fact that he was an S-class hero, his question felt less like curiosity and more like subtle judgment. Yes, she admitted after a brief pause, unable to come up with an excuse. I thought so. So, are you two good now? He asked, unfazed. I guess, kind of. Unsure of how to explain, she offered a vague answer. As long as you're good now. Otherwise, you two were really disturbing the neighborhood, Saitama added with a casual nod. Well, it mainly happened because monsters came to attack Master Shinji. Most of the noise was probably caused by them, Genos interjected at that moment, stepping in to explain. Huh? Seriously? There really were monsters? Saitama's eyes widened a little, clearly surprised. Yes. They were working with that mosquito monster from before. They've set their sights on Master Shinji's body, oh, and on yours too, Mr. Saitama, Genos reported with a serious tone. Mine too? Saitama blinked, then quickly clarified, I'm not interested in monsters. No, that Dr. Genos wants to use your and Master Shinji's bodies for research. So, we're planning to eliminate the House of Evolution as soon as possible. Otherwise, they'll keep sending people to bother us, Genos explained. Saitama nodded slightly. Got it. Do you need my help? If possible, Saitama, it'd be best if you could come with us, Shinji said, glancing at him. The House of Evolution only had one remaining major threat, the dragon-level Carnage Kabuto. Shinji wasn't too worried about defeating him, but he wanted Saitama along to break Dr. Genos' spirit and put a full stop to this whole mess. Sure. When are you planning to leave? Saitama asked. Whenever. Tomorrow, or even right now, Shinji said casually. Then let's go now and get it over with. I can't miss the supermarket super sale the day after tomorrow. His tone turned unexpectedly serious. The weekly sale offered massive discounts, and even though Saitama wasn't strapped for cash anymore, the habit of rushing to those events had stuck with him. It was practically part of his identity now. Then let's move. Shinji stood up, ready to go. On the other hand, Fubuki, still seated, hadn't moved. Both Shinji and Genos turned toward her. Fubuki, aren't you going back? Shinji asked. Master and I are heading out to destroy the House of Evolution. You should get going too, Genos said, his tone flat and direct. Oh, right. Snapped out of her thoughts, Fubuki quickly got up. They all left together, and Shinji made sure to lock the door behind him. Even in an abandoned area, it was just good practice. Deep underground, in the House of Evolution's main research facility. This can't be. How could this happen? All the elite fighters we sent out were wiped out. Even Beast King. Dr. Genus's face twisted in disbelief. He couldn't comprehend it. His most powerful creations, the pinnacle of his experiments, the very tools he intended to use to eradicate outdated humanity, had been completely destroyed. According to Armored Gorilla's report, that red-eyed boy and the cyborg are on their way here. If we don't act now, everything we've built will be lost, one of his clones warned from behind. The room was filled with identical copies of Dr. Genus. They all wore the same plain lab coats, the only difference between them being the numbers stitched into their uniforms. If that's the case, Dr. Genus's eyes narrowed, a mix of anger and desperation flaring in them. Then we'll have to use our last resort. Prepare to release the Carnage Kabuto. Chapter 42, The House of Evolution Base. The moment those words left Dr. Genus's mouth, the room of clones erupted into a panic. What? No! We can't. Even though, right now, it really is our only option. Still. Every single clone looked terrified at the mere mention of Carnage Kabuto. The name alone seemed to drag out memories they'd all rather forget, as if it was tied to some deep-seated trauma. Calm down. This is only a last resort, to be used if we're truly out of options, Dr. Genus said grimly. His voice dropped to a heavy, serious tone. The surface building is filled with traps. There's a good chance they won't even make it down here. Besides, you all know what kind of consequences we're facing this time. Meanwhile, as she made her way back, Fubuki suddenly remembered something important. She had completely forgotten about Eyelashes and Mountain Ape. They had been blasted away by Shinji earlier, and she hadn't seen them since. She eventually found them in a nearby trash bin, of all places. Apparently, their flight had ended right in the middle of it. Both were unconscious, lying awkwardly among the garbage. Fubuki sighed and reached in to shake them awake. A moment later, Eyelashes and Mountain Ape stirred and slowly crawled out of the bin, their movements sluggish and their eyes dazed. Lady Fubuki! What happened to us? Eyelashes mumbled, clearly struggling to recall anything. The last thing either of them remembered was preparing to deal with that cocky new guy. Then it all went blank. Forget it. Let's go back, Fubuki said flatly. All right. Still groggy, the two men dusted off their clothes and leaned on each other for support as they stumbled after her. Though they were ranked second and third among the B-class, getting launched that far hadn't done any serious damage. Just left them sore, dizzy, and covered in trash. On the way back, Eyelashes hesitated before asking, Lady Fubuki, did we lose? What happened with that Kamui guy? We lost, Fubuki replied calmly. His strength was far beyond anything we imagined. She didn't think Shinji could rival someone like Sweet Mask, let alone monsters like her sister, but even so, she had to admit it. Shinji was strong. Strong enough to be considered a monster in his own right. I see, Eyelashes and Mountain Ape went quiet, the weight of her words sinking in. They assumed Fubuki must be furious, that her pride had been crushed. But strangely enough, she wasn't angry. Instead, there was something else bubbling inside her. A strange sense of anticipation. And even a flicker of excitement. Back at the Blizzard Group's base. Lady Fubuki, are you hurt? Lily rushed to her as soon as she entered, eyes widening at the sight of her disheveled appearance. Yeah, but it's nothing serious. Just a few scrapes, Fubuki replied casually with a wave of her hand. Was it that guy who did this to you? That's unforgivable. Lily exclaimed, already stepping forward. I'll go confront him right now. Calm down. It wasn't Shinji who hurt me. Fubuki stopped her before she could storm out. None of you are allowed to provoke him ever again. This time, he saved me. If it weren't for him, I might not have come back. Just thinking about Beast King and Armored Gorilla sent a chill down her spine. If Shinji hadn't appeared when he did, she didn't want to imagine what might have happened. Oh? So that means he's joined the Blizzard Group already? Lily asked, her voice full of curiosity. More or less, Fubuki replied with a nod. She already had a few ideas brewing in her mind. I see. Guess that guy knows what's good for him, Lily said with a satisfied smile. Not long after Fubuki left the room, Lily couldn't resist. She whipped out her phone, opened Line, and began tapping away at a message to Shinji. I heard you've joined the Blizzard group. I bet you couldn't resist Lady Fubuki's charm, right? Let me give you a tour of our base sometime. By the way, what happened to Lady Fubuki's injuries? Did you guys run into monsters in the restricted zone? Message after message flew out, but Shinji hadn't replied. The text stayed marked as unread, and his status showed him offline. That was because, at the moment, Shinji was mid-mission. Headed straight for the House of Evolution, and naturally, he hadn't brought his phone with him. He, Saitama, and Genos had been running for 4 hours, making their way from the abandoned district of Z-City to a remote mountainous region where the House of Evolution's hidden base was located. Shinji had a rough idea of where it was but had never visited the location before, so he couldn't use Kamui or Flying Thunder God to teleport there. Saitama, who didn't know the area at all, avoided using his usual absurdly long jumps to keep from flying off course. Genos, who did know the route, simply chose to follow along on foot since the others were running. Shinji could have made things faster with the body flicker technique, but considering Saitama was with them, he didn't want to draw unnecessary attention. Zipping around like a ninja the whole way would have felt awkward and a bit showy. So, the three of them ran the entire way. This should be the place Armored Gorilla mentioned, Shinji said, spotting a tall building nestled among thick forest and trees. As they reached the foot of the building, Genos didn't waste a second. He dropped into a combat stance, raised both arms, and locked onto the structure. Boom! A full-powered blast from his incineration cannon shot out, reducing the building to flaming rubble in an instant. A small mushroom cloud billowed up into the air, and the explosion even tore into the hillside behind the building, leaving a massive crater in its wake. This was the result of Genos' most recent upgrades, courtesy of Dr. Casino. With that one strike, every trap and defense mechanism in the building was instantly destroyed. Left smoldering in pieces. What the hell was that? You're a bit too sudden, don't you think? Saitama said, blinking at the charred remains. I believe this was the most efficient method. Was there something wrong with that? Genos replied flatly. I mean, yeah, it's logical, but you went full brutality mode. You know you need to start easy and then work your way up. Saitama muttered. That's inefficient. Giving chances to an enemy doesn't sound good. Genos replied. Man, you need to get a hobby. Genos rubbed his chin. Okay, acquiring a hobby. I think birds. Let's head down from here. The real base should be underground, Shinji interrupted, already examining the exposed structure of the area. So it was just a shell. That surface building was a decoy all along, Genos concluded, quickly catching on. Then let's hurry and get down there, Saitama added. Together, the three of them stepped into the underground passage, officially entering the true heart of the House of Evolution. Ding! Host has reached the House of Evolution base. Reward, 5 points. Chapter 43, Carnage Kabuto. Deep within a vast underground chamber, the floor was soaked in blood and strewn with torn limbs and mutilated corpses, the remains of Dr. Genos' clones, all slaughtered in an instant. The monster responsible stood tall in the center of the carnage, a grotesque hybrid of man and rhinoceros beetle. Covered in thick armor, with a body built like a tank, its humanoid face twisted with a manic expression. This was the result of Genos' warped genetic experiment, the Carnage Kabuto. Huff, huff, huff. With a loud crack, the creature slammed another clone into the wall, blood and bone exploding on impact. It wasn't just attacking, it was reveling in the violence. Only after a long pause did Dr. Genos dare to emerge from the shadows. His face was drenched in cold sweat, and his hands were trembling. Carnage Kabuto, you've killed so many of my clones again. You should have calmed down by now, right? If not for his backup stock of disposable clones, Genos wouldn't have risked showing his face at all. Huh? Carnage Kabuto turned his head toward him, his red eyes narrowing. With a quick jerk of his neck, he snapped the metal shackles that had restrained him. What are you talking about? Calm down? Not a chance. You locked me, the strongest weapon in the House of Evolution, down here in this underground prison? What a waste! That pissed me off. Veins bulged across his forehead as the rage built up in his voice. It was clear he hadn't forgiven Genos for sealing him away. Calm down. Your mental state was unstable. We couldn't control you, so we had no choice. Genos replied, barely holding it together. If it hadn't been for desperation, the looming threat of total failure, he would have never released the beast again. Control me? Ha 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 ha. Carnage Kabuto let out a wild, mocking laugh. I'm the perfect evolution of your so-called new humanity. You lot? You're the fossils. You should be serving me. Dr. Genos didn't argue. He just couldn't. Even if he wanted to justify himself, he knew he couldn't win against a creature like this. But deep down, he understood the truth, this thing was a failure. Sure, it had unmatched power, but lacked stability and discipline. A wild beast wearing a mask of a man. Just then, Genos's wristwatch beeped urgently. He glanced at the screen and quickly changed the subject. Let's talk about something more important. There's a target I want you to collect, someone absurdly strong. Only you have a chance of beating him. Dead or alive, I don't care, just bring him in. Meanwhile, deep in the labyrinthine underground corridors of the facility, Shinji, Saitama, and Genos were making their way forward. The passage seemed endless, dimly lit, and eerily quiet. Beep. Beep. Suddenly, Genos's bioscanner gave a reading. Did it find Dr. Genos, or a monster? Shinji asked, glancing back. Genos studied the screen for a moment, his expression tightening. 2 lifeforms. Both approaching fast. There are 2 targets coming straight for us, he shouted, stepping back instinctively. Genos, get back, Shinji warned sharply. Something was coming, and fast. Using the insight granted by his Mangekyo Sharingan, Shinji had already seen it coming, the towering figure of Carnage Kabuto charging down the corridor toward them, its presence like a storm bearing down. The thunderous noise grew rapidly louder until, in the blink of an eye, the beast appeared before them. It was dragging Dr. Genos along, holding him up effortlessly by the head like a toy. Oh! 3 people. Which one's your target? Carnage Kabuto asked with a cruel smirk, glancing at them with gleaming eyes. That red-eyed youth, and the bald one too, Genos choked out, his words nearly lost as the crushing grip on his skull threatened to cave it in. Is that so? Then the third one's useless. Without a second thought, Carnage Kabuto tossed Genos aside like trash and lunged at Genos. Even without transforming, its speed was terrifying. Genos couldn't react in time, it was as if the air itself had vanished between them. But just as the massive blow was about to land, Shinji calmly placed a hand on Genos' shoulder. In the very next instant, the beetle's colossal fist, nearly the size of Genos himself, passed straight through the space Genos had just occupied and slammed into the wall behind them, punching a deep crater into the concrete. Huh? Carnage Kabuto blinked in surprise, genuinely confused by the miss. Meanwhile, Genos, with his eyes wide, took a half-step back. If his face hadn't been cybernetic, he would be sweating profusely. Master Shinji, he murmured. He hadn't seen anything. Could the slight touch on his shoulder have been what moved him? Teleportation? Or something else? Carnage Kabuto's gaze shifted to both of them, eyes narrowing as he noticed they were completely unharmed. Humph, looks like you've got some skill. Dodging one of my attacks, not bad. But instead of following up with another hit, the beetle cracked his neck and grinned. Name's Carnage Kabuto. There's a combat arena nearby. Let's go there and have a proper fight. Sure, Shinji replied with a nod, calm as ever. That answer only made the monster's grin widen. After being locked away in the underground lab for so long, his thirst for battle was practically boiling over. Before long, the group entered a massive, circular arena surrounded by reinforced steel and concrete. It was the largest combat chamber in the facility. Dr. Gina stayed back in the shadows, choosing not to interfere, just observe. "This is the biggest arena we've got down here," Carnage Kabuto said, stepping to the center and stretching out his limbs. "All three of you can come at me. Hopefully, you'll put up more of a fight than the others did." His expression twisted into something wild and gleeful. "Now then, let's have ourselves a good old-fashioned slaughter." "No need. I'm not into gangbanging up on someone so ugly." "Let me take you on first," Shinji said, already stepping forward. "You want to go first, huh? Then I guess I'm up next," Saitama added casually from the side, looking completely unbothered. Internally, he was hopeful. If this thing could push Shinji even a little, maybe, just maybe, it would finally be a decent fight. But before Shinji could advance further, Genos stepped forward instead. "Master, let me go first," he said, his tone resolute. "Genos, didn't you say you wanted to learn from me? Then watch closely. This is your chance to see how I fight." What Shinji didn't say was the part lingering in the back of his mind. "Once you see it, you'll probably stop calling me your master." "Yes, master. I understand." Genos answered without hesitation, taking a step back as he focused. Carnage Kabuto tilted his head at them, unimpressed. "So you're not gonna team up? Fine. I'll just take you apart one at a time." He started forward at a casual pace, the floor creaking under each step. His eyes studied Shinji's calm expression with something between curiosity and anticipation. "Oh." Still standing still, not even flinching. "Confident, huh? Good. I like the brave ones." He gave a short nod to himself, lips curling into a twisted grin. This one looked promising. Genos might have finally dragged out someone worth breaking. And then, in a blink, his entire body vanished. To Genos's eyes, it was nearly instantaneous. One moment, Carnage Kabuto was in front of them. Next, he reappeared behind Shinji, launching a full-force punch aimed right for his spine. So fast. Genos couldn't keep up. His sensors barely registered the movement before the strike was already halfway there. Panic kicked in. He wanted to shout, to warn him, but the punch was about to connect. Except it didn't. Carnage Kabuto's fist froze just short of Shinji's back, trembling slightly midair. He hadn't missed because of hesitation. It was instinct. His peripheral vision caught those eyes, deep red, glowing like molten glass, staring back at him without a hint of fear. There was no doubt. That gaze was locked onto him the entire time. In truth, Shinji hadn't moved because he hadn't needed to. With his Mangekyo Sharingan, he'd been reading every tiny movement in the beetle's body. Every twitch of muscle, the angle of the elbow, the shift in weight, all of it laid bare. "You're too slow." His voice came out soft, almost bored, but the effect was chilling. Carnage Kabuto's smirk twitched, the momentum behind his strike dissolving in silence. And just like that, the predator had become uncertain. Chapter 44, Kamui Rasengan. That single, casual remark from Shinji pushed Carnage Kabuto over the edge. With a furious roar that rattled the walls, he lunged forward and threw a punch with everything he had, aiming to smash the smug human into dust. But once again, his massive, armor-plated fist went straight through Shinji's body like he wasn't even there. The beetle froze in confusion, staring at his own arm. This was the second time his blow had connected with nothing but air, and the phenomenon made no sense. Shinji hadn't dodged. He hadn't even blinked. Yet it felt like striking a ghost. From the sidelines, Genos watched intently, his expression tense. He couldn't figure it out either. He'd seen tech-enhanced warriors and psychics with all kinds of strange powers, but this? This ability to let attacks pass through the body itself defied every law of physics he knew. And then it clicked. Back when Shinji had saved him from that earlier strike, he had touched Genos' shoulder right before the punch missed. Could it be? Shinji was moving so fast that he was slipping past the attacks entirely? So fast that both he and the enemy couldn't perceive the movement? That would explain why it looked like the attack simply phased through him. It wasn't intangibility, it was movement beyond their comprehension. Genos was sure of it now. That brief touch earlier wasn't just to reassure him. Shinji had brought him along, pulled him out of danger with speed that bent the limits of time and perception. His admiration shot through the roof. The difference between them wasn't just a gap in power. It was a whole different dimension. He clenched his fists, watching every detail of his master's movements like a student memorizing a divine scripture. What he didn't realize, however, was that his entire theory was complete BS. Shinji, unaware of the growing mythology Genos was building around him, remained focused. Saitama, standing off to the side, kept his usual blank expression. He wasn't impressed or concerned. If anything, he just looked mildly curious. He couldn't quite tell how Shinji was nullifying those attacks, but it wasn't enough to spark any serious interest. Taking advantage of the brief pause, Shinji calmly stepped forward and tapped the beetle's side. It was just a light touch at the waist, no damage, no power behind it. Carnage Kabuto looked down, confused. What the hell was that supposed to be? Are you stupid? He threw another punch, fast and brutal. There was no way he'd let it miss this time. But as soon as the punch started, Shinji disappeared. In a blink, he reappeared on the far side of the arena. Teleportation. The beetle whirled around in shock. So fast? He hadn't seen it at all. One moment, Shinji was right in front of him, the next, he was across the battlefield. Unbeknownst to the monster, Shinji had placed multiple flying thunder god marks across the arena in advance using his kunai, allowing him to jump freely from point to point. Now standing at a distance, Shinji extended his right hand and began gathering chakra, some kind of look-alike energy. Energy swirled in his palm, spinning and compressing into a tight, glowing sphere. Mental energy and physical energy twisted together, flowing in multiple directions and collapsing inward into a high-density spiral. The chakra began to roar quietly in his hand, forming a sphere that shimmered with raw, focused power. It was the Rasengan. Up until now, he hadn't used it in live combat. He had trained the shape and the control, but this would be the first time he tested it against a real opponent. And not just any opponent, a dragon-level monster. Monsters like Carnage Kabuto didn't come around often. They were too rare, too dangerous, and far too durable to waste on casual fighting. If Shinji was going to test a new jutsu, this was the perfect opportunity. Ordinary enemies would be obliterated before the technique could even stabilize. Which made the beetle the perfect target. He narrowed his eyes at the glowing sphere forming in Shinji's hand. He scoffed, voice full of contempt. What? You think that tiny little ball is gonna stop me? Don't insult me. But Genos felt something different. His mechanical sensors buzzed with unease as he observed the energy buildup. No ordinary technique gave off a signature like that. No. I can feel it. That orb carries something incredibly dense and dangerous. Could Master Shinji really take down a monster like that with just this one attack? He'd never seen the jutsu before, so he couldn't assess its full potential, but everything about it screamed lethal. Shinji ignored the taunts completely. The Rasengan in his hand continued to spin, gaining speed, the energy tighter and more focused with every passing second. Once it reached full form, he started walking toward the enemy, calm as ever. Carnage Kabuto actually relaxed slightly at the sight. Your dodging was impressive. I'll give you that. But if this is all your offense amounts to, then let me show you what real power looks like. With a roar that shook the walls, he launched forward at breakneck speed, intending to finish it all with a single devastating punch. The ground cracked beneath his feet as he hurled his full weight forward. But Shinji didn't blink. Just as the punch was about to land, he vanished. Huh? Carnage Kabuto's eyes widened in disbelief. He twisted mid-attack, scanning the space ahead, but Shinji was gone. What he didn't realize was that Shinji had already reappeared, standing inches from his chest. And in Shinji's hand, the Rasengan had changed. It no longer glowed with compressed chakra. It had turned black, a void-like sphere that twisted space itself around it. Kamui plus Rasengan. Shinji didn't hesitate. He thrust the swirling black sphere directly into the beetle's gut. There was no clang, no impact, no resistance. His reinforced carapace, so tough it had once been declared indestructible, fractured instantly. The sphere sank in, dragging matter out of existence as it bored through flesh and bone. It passed straight through his body like it was made of paper. Grah! A tortured scream erupted from his mouth as blood exploded from the wound, gushing down in thick streams. He stumbled backward, legs faltering, eyes wide with pure panic. He stared at the gaping hole in his abdomen, unable to comprehend what had just happened. What? I actually got hit? His voice trembled. The confidence from moments ago had vanished. In the shadows, Dr. Genus looked on in horror. He had never seen Carnage Kabuto bleed, let alone collapse. He was the strongest creation Genus had ever built, and now he looked like a dying insect swatting at ghosts. Genos also stood frozen, disbelief written all over his face. That jutsu, it changed mid-fight? He had sensed the overwhelming pressure of the original Rasengan. But the moment it struck the beetle, there was nothing. No energy burst, no shockwave. It was like the orb had vanished on contact, yet the destruction it left behind was undeniable. It was unnatural. Impossible. The moment the Rasengan struck, it didn't release an explosion, it erased matter. No shockwave, no heat, just void. It completely defied the laws of physics. If psychics could bend them, then Shinji had stepped outside those rules entirely. Genos clenched his fists. His sensors had failed to catch even half of what happened. Despite watching with full focus, he hadn't seen the moment Shinji triggered that transformation or how the jutsu penetrated the beetle's armor like air. Damn it! He gritted his teeth in frustration. This was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to witness his master's true combat ability, and he couldn't even keep up with the basics. If this was Shinji's standard, then what business did a second-rate cyborg like him have claiming to be his student? Maybe Master Shinji had been right to hesitate. Maybe he really wasn't strong enough to learn from someone operating on this level. While Genos stood there, caught in his spiraling thoughts, Saitama simply watched with a neutral face. He was impressed, sure. Shinji's powers were flashy, complicated, and strong as hell. But something about all the spinning, teleporting, and glowing spheres felt a bit excessive to him. He couldn't help feeling a little disappointed. He wanted punches and kicks, not hard-to-understand abilities in the fight. So this was the big beetle something? That was it? Looked like he wouldn't get his turn after all. You bastard! Carnage Kabuto howled, staggering, blood dripping from his abdomen in thick streams. What the hell did you just do? Where did you get power like that? Shinji stood silently at first, his eyes dimming slightly as he looked at the wounded creature. Then he spoke, voice low. You really want to know? The beetle blinked. He hadn't expected an answer. That was just a scream of rage, not a real question. But now, he found himself frozen, watching. Somehow, Shinji's presence forced him to listen. Even with his body ripped open, he stood there, as if waiting for a revelation he didn't understand. Even Genos leaned forward unconsciously, eyes gleaming. Was this it? Was his master finally going to explain it all, top of form? Chapter 45, all thanks to natural talent. But wouldn't revealing the method to grow stronger also hand the enemy the same opportunity? Was that really a smart move? Genos was torn. As much as he craved to understand how Master Shinji had reached his incredible strength, the thought of potential enemies eavesdropping and gaining that same power left him deeply conflicted. I, Shinji, have reached this level all thanks to my extraordinary talent. Deep Blue, add points. With that bold declaration, Shinji casually formed another Rasengan in his hand. This one, laced with the power of Kamui, crackled ominously before he casually tossed it toward the Carnage Kabuto. It might have looked like nonsense, what with the odd boast and the relaxed throw, but Shinji was trying to send a message to Genos. He wasn't holding back any secret technique. He genuinely had nothing to pass down. The Rasengan? System gift. The dual Kamui? Also from the system. Every bit of power he wielded was something the system had handed to him. There was no ancient scroll, no decade-long training arc, just pure, unearned advantage. Because Shinji hadn't put any effort into the throw, the Kamui Rasengan wasn't especially fast. Still, its ominous black glow made every instinct in the Carnage Kabuto scream danger. Without hesitation, he leapt 10 meters into the air, narrowly avoiding the sphere of death. Genos stood rooted, caught in a whirlwind of thought. What did Master Shinji mean by all that? His brain was working overtime, trying to dig out some deeper meaning buried in the words. Saitama, meanwhile, remained completely unfazed. From the shadows, Dr. Gina stared, dumbfounded. What kind of training method was that supposed to be? Just talent? Was the whole point really that he got that powerful purely by being born gifted? Then, suddenly, smack! Genos clapped his fist into his palm, eyes lighting up. Of course! Master wasn't being literal. He must be saying that while talent helps, true strength only comes through tireless effort and rigorous training. That's why he put it in such an obscure way, so enemies wouldn't be able to understand. What a brilliant, hidden message. What wisdom! Only someone as deep as Master Shinji could conceal such profound truths in something that sounded so simple. Shinji, blissfully unaware, had no idea his worst fear was playing out. He didn't mind if Genos thought too little of him, but imagining him overthinking this nonsense into some grand philosophy? That was another matter entirely. You bastard. Are you screwing with me? The Carnage Kabuto suddenly lost it. Crack! Without warning, his body started mutating. Veins popped along every limb. His eyes burned bright red. Wait! Carnage Kabuto? Why, you're going out of control again? Dr. Genos recoiled in panic, horror rising in his voice. If you don't want to say how you got strong, then whatever. I'm the strongest anyway. In a split second, the beetle's transformation was complete. His muscles expanded grotesquely, each fiber exaggerated to monstrous proportions. The horns on his head and back doubled in length, twitching with menace. Veins snaked across his entire frame. His face twisted into a cruel, unrecognizable mask. The gaping wound in his abdomen sealed shut like it had never existed. Carnage mode activated. Key. Once I enter Carnage mode, I lose all reason for the next 7 days. I can't even stop myself. The beetle laughed like a lunatic, body trembling with wild, barely contained power. Before the beetle even finished speaking, he was gone, disappeared like he had just teleported. His speed had doubled, crossing into something truly terrifying. Shinji barely glanced at him and muttered, "So what you're saying is, you'll be raging until next Saturday?" Saitama, who had been watching the whole time with that usual blank look, suddenly jolted like a computer crashing. His eyes widened, his brain jammed, and for a few seconds, it looked like his entire thought process had blue-screened. That's right. After I kill you, I'll head outside and keep slaughtering until next Saturday. Ha 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 ha. The beetle lunged forward and threw a punch straight at Shinji, but in the same instant, Shinji vanished, reappearing at a distant marked location using Flying Thunder God. Boom! The area where Shinji had stood just a second ago exploded into a crater, the earth shattering in every direction. Deep cracks spiderwebbed out for dozens of meters. One punch. That's all it took. Genos' eyes went wide with dread. If that attack had come at him, he wouldn't have had a chance. It would have torn through him like wet paper. he would have been nothing but smoking debris. Luckily, Master Shinji was too fast. He had already moved nearly 100 meters away in a blink. At this point, Genos couldn't keep up visually with either of them. The Carnage Kabuto and Shinji had both crossed into a tier of speed that left his sensors completely useless. Meanwhile, Saitama still hadn't moved. Nobody could tell what part of the situation had short-circuited him this time. It's over. No one in this world can stop an out-of-control Carnage Kabuto. From the shadows, Dr. Genos let out a hollow laugh. This wasn't the result he'd hoped for, but at least it would prove that the new human race he created would surpass the obsolete and ignorant species clinging to the old world. Don't run! If you've got guts, face me head-on. The Carnage Kabuto charged again, stomping down and closing the gap between him and Shinji in a single blur. In an instant, he was only meters away, his massive fist already mid-swing. But this time, Shinji's expression had gone cold. The easygoing facade was gone. He was ready to respond. Susanoo. Just as the beetle's punch came crashing down, a massive skeletal structure surged up around Shinji, glowing blue as it wrapped around his entire body. Alert! The host has exchanged physique plus 110, costing points minus 110. Current remaining points, 0. Physique plus 110. Current physique, 588. While summoning Susanoo, Shinji casually assigned himself a stat boost like it was nothing more than checking a menu. The Susanoo stopped growing once it reached stage 3. In this form, it took on the iconic appearance of a Crow Tengu warrior, its defense significantly upgraded, even if its physical size didn't increase dramatically. What the hell is that? Dr. Genos nearly choked at the sight. The towering blue avatar looming over Shinji was even larger than the Carnage Kabuto, and unlike anything he'd ever seen. Genos narrowed his eyes. Yet again, something beyond his comprehension had manifested around his master. And somehow, he still couldn't even begin to understand it. Aura, 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 aura. The berserk Carnage Kabuto charged in, totally unfazed by the sudden appearance of the Susanoo. He launched a storm of wild punches with both fists, smashing down furiously on Shinji. But every strike bounced harmlessly off the armored Crow Tengu plating. No cracks. No damage. Nothing. Shinji, now done playing games, slowly lifted one arm, and Susanoo responded with Shinji. Its twin swords, both glowing with Kamui energy, slashed forward and across, an X-shaped arc of destruction. The Carnage Kabuto froze mid-attack. Then, his massive body was neatly sliced into 4 symmetrical chunks, cleanly severed without a drop of resistance. Alert! The host has defeated the dragon-level monster Carnage Kabuto. Reward, 80 points. From the shadows, Dr. Genos stood in a stupor. His glasses were askew, his mouth hanging open. His strongest creation, his ultimate masterpiece, had been dismembered in a single move. His brain just shut down. Everything he believed in was shattered. Meanwhile, Saitama finally blinked, shaking off his stupor. Shinji. I need to ask you something, he said, lowering his head like he was about to deliver grave news. What is it? Shinji turned, expression flat. What day is it today? Saitama's voice trembled slightly. Today? It's Saturday, Shinji answered casually. Gwa! I got the date wrong. Saitama screamed as he dropped to his knees, clutching his head. Today was the supermarket sale day. Relax, Saitama. If you hurry, you might still make it in time. Okay, I am going. The moment Shinji said that, Saitama launched himself upward. His jump shattered the ceiling, blasting a massive hole through the reinforced structure as he rocketed back to the surface like a missile. Dr. Genos slowly tilted his head up, mouth still open, as he stared at the sunlight now pouring in from above. His neck audibly creaked. This facility was buried deep underground. The entire structure had been reinforced with some of the strongest materials available. And that guy just jumped through it? Is he even human? Genos. Let's go. Yes, master. Genos responded without hesitation, his tone respectful. Wait! Dr. Genos suddenly stumbled forward from the shadows, unable to hold back any longer. Shinji paused and looked back. You seriously never underwent any kind of experiment? Dr. Genos shouted, almost desperate. No hard work. Just raw talent, Shinji replied instantly, not even blinking. It wasn't for Dr. Genos. It was for Genos. Hopefully, Genos will understand Shinji. Chapter 46, New Mangekyo Sharingan Ability. Dr. Genos didn't answer. He just stood there, frozen. That silence was more telling than any words. It wasn't just a moment of doubt. This was full-on despair, the kind that sinks deep into your bones. Everything he'd built, everything he thought he knew. It had all come crashing down. A red-eyed teenager who could summon a giant spectral warrior. A bald man who wiped out his most powerful creation with a single punch. These people defied logic. They defied science. They defied him. His legs gave out. He dropped to his knees, trembling. Maybe the world didn't need to change. Maybe he was the one who was wrong all along. Master, are we going to deal with him too? Genos asked quietly, glancing at the direction Dr. Genos had stumbled off to. No need, Shinji replied without looking back. He didn't explain. Just kept walking. There was no need to say it out loud. What had happened today was more than enough to break the man. He'd probably abandoned science altogether. If anything, Shinji figured he'd be selling takoyaki at a street corner before long. Killing their hope and letting them live is far crueler than killing them. Understood, Genos didn't question it further. He simply followed behind his teacher in silence. On the way back, Shinji took a few quiet moments to check the condition of his body. As expected, using the third stage of Susanoo had taken a toll on him. Just summoning it for a short time had left a lingering discomfort in his muscles. The strain wasn't something he could ignore. He definitely wasn't ready to attempt the full-body version. Not unless something changed. To use the third stage freely, his body needed either a stronger concentration of Hashirama cells, or the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Without one of those, it wasn't sustainable. He considered both options. The Hashirama cells might be attainable with enough experimentation. But the eternal Mangekyo, that was a problem. Obito didn't have any siblings. And without a blood relative who also had the Mangekyo, fusing to achieve the eternal form was impossible. Well, without a system at least. Meanwhile, Saitama barely managed to make it to the supermarket in time for the big sale. Shinji had already gone home. Genos, on the other hand, had returned to his own place. Shinji was planning to swing by the Hero Association to report his latest monster kill, phone in hand. But when he turned on the screen, he was met with a wall of unread messages, all from Lily. Apparently, she hadn't taken his silence well. After sending 3 messages with no reply, she followed up with 3 angry emojis, each one more steamed than the last. Then came the message that caught his attention. She said he had joined the Blizzard group. Shinji stared at it for a moment before slowly replying with a single question mark. Seconds later, the app showed that the message had been read. Almost immediately, Lily fired back. Lily, you finally replied. Do you never check your phone? Shinji, I was dealing with something earlier. Obviously, I couldn't check it. And who told you I joined the Blizzard group? Lily, obviously Lady Fubuki. Why? What's wrong? Shinji responded with an ellipsis, then paused. He hadn't agreed to join the Blizzard group, he was sure of that. But if Fubuki told Lily he had, then she clearly had no intention of letting him go. She just decided on her own and told everyone else he was in. That woman. Shinji, let me be clear. I never joined the Blizzard group. I've got stuff to take care of. We'll talk later. He sent the message, powered down his screen, and slid the phone into his pocket. Seconds later, Lily's next wave of texts started pouring in. Lily, wait! What's going on? Here? Lily, but Lady Fubuki clearly told me that you joined. Did you back out last minute or something? Lily, don't leave me on read. ... No matter how many messages she sent, none were opened. Shinji's phone remained silent. Aside from actual calls, he always kept it that way, no vibrations, no notifications. He only checked it when he had time. That's how he liked it. Total peace and quiet, no interruptions. With a quick flash of chakra and a swirl of space, Shinji used the Flying Thunder God technique to teleport straight to the Hero Association's Z-branch. Inside his Kamui space, he had stored the corpses of Carnage Kabuto and Beast King, both former elites of the House of Evolution. They made perfect evidence for his monster extermination report. However, neither of the two had ever been officially catalogued by the association. That left the staff scratching their heads on how to log the kill. Mr. Kamui, the examiner said, smiling awkwardly, we don't have any existing data on these two, so we can't give you a finalized contribution score just yet. How about this? We'll submit your case to the higher-ups and send the monster bodies to HQ for analysis. They'll handle the classification and score afterward. That's fine. Handle it however you want. Shinji's tone was relaxed. He wasn't in a rush. Honestly, he was probably the only hero who'd go out of his way to bring the corpses as proof. Saitama sure wouldn't have. He'd just punch and walk off. As long as the association didn't forget to give him proper credit, he was content. 3 days later, the results from HQ finally came in. Carnage Kabuto had been given a preliminary classification as a dragon-level threat. Beast King, meanwhile, was designated demon level. Seemed accurate enough. The association never bothered with detailed subdivisions like mid or high dragon anyway. But with the report came something else, an unexpected wave of suspicion from HQ. After all, Shinji was still officially just a B-class hero, yet he dragged in the corpses of monsters that even the average S-class would have had serious trouble with. That alone raised more than a few eyebrows. Naturally, a high-level executive meeting was called almost immediately. All the attendees were upper-echelon officials of the Hero Association. You've all heard about B-class rank 4 hero Camui, right? So, what does everyone think? My take? We wait and observe. If he keeps taking down demon-level and even dragon-level threats like King did, then we don't have anything to worry about. Agreed. If he's another silent powerhouse like King, there's no reason to doubt him yet. In the end, the majority sided with caution, and the leadership decided to keep an eye on Shinji rather than take any direct action. They didn't try to block his rise either. The whole meeting lasted under 10 minutes. If it had been about Saitama or Genos, and if those two actually did more public hero work, this same group would have easily spent 2 more hours debating their hero names and titles. But Shinji? Fast, quiet resolution. One of the few genuinely competent officials, Sekindar, sat there feeling thoroughly unimpressed. It wasn't that he didn't trust Shinji, it was just annoying. A supposedly high-stakes meeting, and nobody had taken it seriously. No deeper questions, no planning, nothing. Just brushed aside like a routine formality. It was ridiculous. Afterward, thanks to the magnitude of his contributions, which far exceeded the expectations of any B-class hero, Shinji was promoted directly to A-class. Because this was a leap in class rather than a simple climb within B-class, he didn't displace Fubuki from a rank 1 spot, nor was he required to take any sort of promotion exam. His first bump came from taking down the demon-level Beast King, which earned him A-class rank 39, the very bottom of the ladder. But when the association reviewed his defeat of the dragon-level Carnage Kabuto, they couldn't ignore the weight of it. He jumped straight to rank 5. So why didn't he go even higher? Simple, rank 1, Sweet Mask, was a major PR figure for the association. His looks, charisma, and public appeal were too valuable to mess with. Meanwhile, ranks 2 through 4 were occupied by disciples of Atomic Samurai, a man the association had to tread carefully around. So, while Shinji deserved more, rank 5 was the ceiling they were willing to offer, for now. The official explanation? His combat history wasn't deep enough. But everyone with a brain knew the truth. Hidden politics, favoritism, and carefully guarded hierarchies still ruled the hero world, no matter how flashy or noble it looked from the outside. Alert! Host has been promoted to A-class hero. Reward unlocked, 30 points plus Mangekyo Sharingan, Shui. Chapter 47, Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Mangekyo Sharingan. Shinji blinked in surprise at the system prompt. He already had both Kamui eyes, so why had the system just rewarded him with another Mangekyo Sharingan? Was he supposed to switch between 2 pairs now? Alternate between sets like changing outfits? It didn't make any sense. But before he could overthink it, the system chimed in with an explanation. Alert! Host confused the dual Kamui Mangekyo Sharingan with Shui Uchiha's Mangekyo Sharingan to obtain the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Wait, seriously? Shinji's eyes widened. He was stunned, but more than anything, he was excited. This was it. The one upgrade he had been dreaming about. The Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan wasn't just a cool power boost, it was an essential evolution. No more blindness, no more recoil from overusing his eyes. Just pure, unrestricted ocular might. And someone was complaining that ocular power is a Chinese novel thing, but the term is related to eyes. So, using that word is not wrong for Sharingan. So, what are the pros? He'd now gain access to Shusui's legendary techniques, like the infamous Kodo Ematsukami, the Genjutsu so powerful it could rewrite a person's will without them even noticing. Plus, Shusui's high-speed body flicker, enhanced by Sharingan perception, was among the best in the Uchiha clan's history. Normally, Mangekyo Sharingan users had 2 unique jutsu, one for each eye. But Shui was a rare exception. Both his eyes used Kodo Ematsukami. The only real mystery was whether the ability would reset after one use or if he could fire it off twice before waiting for a cooldown. Still, Shinji had to hand it to the system. It had solved his biggest issue without him lifting a finger. Ever since he'd left the House of Evolution, he'd been worrying about how to awaken the eternal form. Obito had no blood relatives alive, and the Eternal Mangekyo was supposed to require a transplant from a close relative. Technically, Obito and Shui weren't siblings, only distantly related through clan bloodlines. The fusion should not have been possible. But the system had overridden the genetics and simply forced compatibility. Alright then. Let's see what this looks like. With a thought, Shinji summoned the new Mangekyo Sharingan into his hand. The eye gleamed with a familiar pattern, sharp, pointed, and unmistakably shaped like a shuriken, Shusui's eye. Not sure what the correct method was, Shinji went for the obvious solution. He pressed the new pair into his sockets, hoping instinct and system mechanics would take care of the rest. To his surprise, there was no pain at all. A blink later, the fusion process was completed. The intricate Kamui spirals merged with Shusui's shuriken design, forming a new, more complex eternal pattern. Immediately, Shinji opened his system panel to check the update. Host, Shinji. Age, 20. Status, Human, A-Class Rank 5. Abilities, Dual Kamui, Kodo Ematsukami, Susanoo, Flying Thunder God Technique, Body Flicker, Shui, Basic Body Flicker, Rasengan, Wood Clone. Weapon, Crimson Blade of Yoru. Physique, 588, plus 20 from Hashirama cells. Points, 110. Point Shop, LD1. Just as he expected, Kodo Ematsukami and Shusui's body flicker were now part of his arsenal. From today on, he no longer had to worry about the side effects of the Mangekyo. No more ocular fatigue, no risk of blindness. All his focus could now go into improving his physical body and increasing the compatibility and purity of the Hashirama cells inside him. Those two upgrades would determine whether he could finally unlock Susanu's final evolution, the complete body Susanu. Ding dong! Right as Shinji was soaking in the rush of his new eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, the doorbell suddenly rang, snapping him back to reality. Genos, maybe? Shinji figured it could be him. Vaccine Man had been glued to his console lately, locked in gaming marathons ever since he bought the thing. Unless specifically summoned, the guy rarely showed up. So yeah, Genos seemed like the logical guess. He strolled casually to the door and opened it. But what greeted him wasn't the cyborg disciple. It was a tall, striking woman with a commanding presence and the kind of beauty that made people turn their heads. You? What are you doing here? Shinji's pupils narrowed as he took in the sight. Standing before him, calm and collected, was none other than Blizzard of Hell, Fubuki. Not happy to see me? She asked, lips curved in a soft, ambiguous smile. Her tone caught him off guard. Compared to their last encounter, she was much more mellow now. The arrogance and guarded sharpness were gone. Instead, she spoke with a calm, almost pleasant demeanor. It's not that you're unwelcome, Shinji replied, thinking back to Lily's messages. Actually, I was planning to ask you something anyway. Come in. Fubuki stepped inside and slipped off her heels at the door. This wasn't her usual domain, so indoor etiquette applied. With no slippers offered, she stepped onto the floor in sleek black stockings. Her gaze moved around the apartment as she entered. Last time, she had barely looked around. Now, she examined everything with quiet curiosity. A modest living space, clean, compact, and far too ordinary for someone like Shinji. Especially considering the kind of people and monsters that revolved around this place, Genos, Saitama, dragon-level threats. It didn't add up. Why was a place like this the center of so much power? But no matter how many times she scanned the room, she found no answers. It looked like any other apartment. Shinji didn't seem to care about her confusion. He walked to the kitchen, brewed a cup of tea, and came back. Take a seat, he said. Thanks. Fubuki sat down across from him and casually reached for a bowl of snacks on the table, making herself comfortable like she belonged. Shinji didn't bat an eye. He got straight to the point. Lily from your Blizzard group told me everything. You added me to your little club without even asking me first, didn't you? Fubuki's hand froze mid-reach, her expression stiffening for the first time. There was a brief flicker of guilt in her eyes. You found out already? She asked, almost too calmly. When did you even meet Lily? Why didn't I know? This wasn't how she wanted things to go. She had planned to slowly build trust, approach Shinji herself, and win him over through her own effort and charisma. She was confident in her charm and leadership and thought she was handling things pretty well. So when Lily had asked about it, she casually said, something like that. After all, Lily was her most trusted subordinate. She hadn't expected her to go behind her back and tell Shinji everything. Now she was stuck in a situation she hadn't prepared for. And it was getting awkward fast. We've known each other for days, Shinji said flatly. But that's not the point. The real question is, you're still not giving up? I won't give up, Fubuki replied, her voice steady and serious. I will recruit you into the Blizzard group, no matter what it takes. This isn't about what it takes, Shinji said, unfazed. You don't have anything that would even tempt me in the first place. And I'm not refusing out of spite or some grand reason. I just don't want to. That's it. He gave a small shrug. If you didn't come here for anything else, I'd appreciate it if you leave soon. Fubuki didn't respond. Her expression was hard to read, somewhere between thoughtful and slightly frustrated. But even with all that swirling in her head, her hand kept reaching for snacks like nothing had happened. Shinji stood up and walked toward the balcony to hang the laundry. The washing cycle had finished a while ago, and he'd been putting it off. When he came back inside, the living room looked almost untouched, except for one detail. Fubuki was still seated in the same spot, legs crossed elegantly, calmly snacking away. Except now half the containers on the table were empty. To be fair, it wasn't like he'd put out a huge spread, but still. Shinji stared for a second. He wasn't the type to get petty over food, but this? This was definitely getting weird. Was she really just here to eat? Or had she already decided this place was some kind of casual hangout spot? Like she'd unofficially labeled it a friend's apartment she could drop by whenever she felt like it? Chapter 48, Training Content. I'd really like to know what exactly you're here for. Shinji finally broke the silence, glancing at Fubuki, who was still lounging like she lived there. It's nothing serious, she replied casually. I just wanted to come and check in. That's understandable. Shinji muttered under his breath, eyeing the empty snack containers on the table. Before either of them could say more, the doorbell rang again. Fubuki, sitting closest, got up without hesitation and went to answer it. Master, it's me, came Genos' voice as the door opened. But instead of Shinji, he was met with Fubuki. Genos paused mid-step, slightly caught off guard by the sight of her. He took in her heels at the door, her relaxed posture, and the faint scent of tea still lingering in the air. Fubuki, are you living with Master Shinji now? He asked, dead serious. Are they dating now? Fubuki blinked, clearly unprepared for that. No, I'm just visiting. Oh, I see. Genos exhaled with visible relief. If his master really was living with a woman, moving in would have made things awkward for everyone involved. Still gripping the handle of a comically oversized luggage bag, Genos turned sideways and dragged it into the apartment. The thing was nearly twice his size and looked like it could fit an entire mecha suit inside. Fubuki stared at it, then at him. Genos, what is all this? Shinji, arms crossed, already had a guess. You're moving in, aren't you? Master, can I live here with you? Genos asked without hesitation. You could stay in the empty unit next door, Shinji offered, jerking his thumb toward it. Genos paused to consider. That works. It made sense. He wouldn't intrude too much, but he'd still be close enough to observe and follow Shinji's training firsthand. Truthfully, Genos didn't even need a proper room. He could easily enter standby mode in a corner of the living room. But he could tell from Shinji's face that such a sight would not be welcome. Without another word, Genos darted off next door and dumped the luggage in the vacant apartment. He didn't clean or organize anything, just dumped the bag and zipped right back. Relaxing wasn't part of his mission. His goal was to document everything, every move, every word, every glance, regarding Master Shinji's training. He pulled out a notebook, sat at the table, and immediately began sketching. Diagrams, annotations, flowcharts, everything went in. Across the table, Fubuki had now shifted into a more refined posture. Gone was the casual snacking, she watched Genos with curiosity and a hint of confusion. She leaned closer to Shinji and whispered, "Is he always like this?" "You have no idea." Shinji nodded with a resigned sigh. Genos, of course, heard them. But he didn't mind. He actually paused and added a new sketch to his notes, Shinji and Fubuki whispering across the table. Apparently, that counted as part of training too. Genos, Shinji said suddenly, his tone shifting into something more serious. Genos instantly sat up straighter and placed his pen down with both hands, eyes fixed on his master. "Master, are you finally going to tell me the real contents of your training?" Hearing that, Fubuki turned her focus to Shinji as well, clearly curious. She wanted to find out what sort of special training a powerhouse like him would pass down to an S-class hero like Genos. First of all, Shinji began seriously, since you're a cyborg, most traditional training methods are useless for you. Genos nodded, listening intently. But you can still keep breaking through, Shinji continued. The fastest path to growth for someone like you is to survive adversity. Facing stronger and stronger enemies is what sharpens you. Even if your physical body doesn't change much, your spirit, your will, can become more resilient. I see real potential in you. Yes, sir. Genos's eyes lit up as if something had finally clicked. Shinji-sensei's words landed like a revelation, simple but profound. I'll give it everything I've got. I won't let you down, Master, he said, rising to his feet with a salute-like motion, his voice filled with conviction. Good. Keep it up. Shinji gave a small nod of approval. What he said wasn't just for encouragement, it was the truth. Genos's biggest leaps in strength always came after near destruction. Each time he was nearly obliterated by a powerful opponent, Dr. Casino would rebuild him stronger than before. That cycle was both brutal and effective. But really, that was all Shinji could tell him. He'd only said it hoping Genos would stop obsessively documenting every blink and breath he took. But the second he finished talking, Genos sat right back down and resumed scribbling furiously in his notebook, more detailed diagrams, more annotations, more ridiculous sketches. Shinji sighed, already giving up on trying to stop him. Forget it. Let him do what he wants. Just then, Fubuki spoke up. Shinji, do you have any training methods you could teach me? No idea. He didn't even blink. Just answered flatly like it wasn't even up for discussion. Fubuki clearly hadn't expected a blunt shutdown like that. I sincerely apologize again for what I did earlier, she said quickly, thinking he was still holding a grudge over the whole joining the Blizzard group without consent thing. She didn't want things to stay tense between them. I accept your apology, Shinji said. But I'm being honest, I really don't know any training methods that would suit you. He let out a sigh. You're an Esper. You'd probably be better off learning from your sister. No way. Her face stiffened immediately. The second her sister was mentioned, her whole mood dipped. Her discomfort was obvious. Shinji noticed but didn't press the issue. He already had a pretty good idea about the complicated relationship between Fubuki and Tatsumaki. Still, Fubuki recovered quickly. A few seconds later, she was right back to nibbling on snacks like nothing had happened. Internally, though, she was calculating just how many calories she consumed since arriving. It was way over her usual limit. She made a mental note to cut back during dinner. That's how she stayed in such top-tier shape, strict tracking, no excuses. By the way, Master, your eyes, Genos suddenly said, his mechanical gaze narrowing. Did they change? He'd seen Shinji's black eyes before. He'd even seen the standard Sharingan. But the pattern now? That was definitely something new. They really did change, Fubuki said quickly, now leaning in with interest. I've always thought your eyes looked a little strange, she added, narrowing her own eyes slightly. But now they got this pattern, and the shape's different too. She leaned in so close Shinji could actually feel the warmth of her breath brushing against his face. Without thinking, he leaned back slightly, resisting the urge to scoot away. Fubuki might be weak, but her body alone was OP for a different reason. Chapter 49, Points Shop Level 2. My eyes have always been like this. There's nothing to be surprised about. Shinji answered calmly, waving off their reactions like it was no big deal. I once thought your eyes might be cybernetic modifications, Master, but I guess I was overthinking it, Genos murmured, still eyeing the new Mangekyo pattern with intrigue. You, don't tell me you're also an Esper? Fubuki leaned in slightly, voice lowering with suspicion. The combination of natural and Shinji's bizarre, reality-defying abilities was too suspicious. Maybe. Shinji didn't commit to an answer. Bang had once asked him the same thing, and honestly? Pretending to be a psychic was the only halfway logical explanation for what he could do. And besides, space-time manipulation did fall under the umbrella of psychic powers in this world. Just look at Blast, the top S-class hero, and a complete enigma. No wonder your powers are so strange, Fubuki muttered. You really are an Esper. That explains it, Genos said with a nod. No wonder Master always said he couldn't teach me anything. His eyes lit up. But now I understand your guidance. You helped me find my own training path. Coming to you really was the right decision. I'm glad you finally get it, Shinji replied, nodding with faint approval. A little while later, Fubuki glanced at the time and stood up. She realized she'd already overstayed her casual visit. Thanks for the hospitality, she said, smoothing down her skirt. It was a polite way of acknowledging the snacks and tea she casually consumed like a regular. Shinji walked her to the door while Genos barely looked up, still absorbed in his scribbles. Why should we have to work just to earn money? Why should we pay just to eat? What kind of freedom is that? Rich people live in luxury. Poor people suffer every single day. The working class makes the rich even richer, while they get nothing. That's why we say no more. I, Hammerhead, will change this broken world. The Paradisers will create a utopia of true freedom. On a crowded street, a group of combat suit-wearing, bald-headed men marched together, shouting loud enough to drown out traffic. At the center stood a massive figure, towering over everyone at over 2.15 meters tall. Fully bald and brimming with misguided confidence, this was Hammerhead, a B-class wanted criminal and the self-proclaimed revolutionary leader of the Paradisers. Their goal? A world without labor. Complete freedom. No jobs. Just vibes. Hammerhead ranted for a solid 5 minutes, fists pumping, voice rising, sweat flying. But the crowd around him? Completely indifferent. No cheers. No followers. Just people walking past like they were invisible. Bunch of brain-dead sheep. Hammerhead growled, clenching his fists. Fine then. Let's make an example. We'll trash the mansion of the richest man in the city, Zenairu. That'll wake people up. With that, he led his bald brigade through the streets. Soon they arrived in front of an absurdly tall skyscraper. This is Zenairu's house? Hammerhead craned his neck, his jaw tightening. The tower loomed over them like a monument to greed. The whole building belongs to one guy? He scowled hard enough to wrinkle his entire forehead. How many dirty tricks did he pull to afford this monstrosity? Smash it! Yes, sir! The bald mob shouted in sync. Each one of them was wearing a high-powered combat suit identical to Hammerhead's, black, reinforced, and more than a little ridiculous. One of the Paradisers stepped forward. With a hiss of hydraulics, the armor on his arms expanded dramatically, doubling and then tripling in size. Then, with a thunderous punch, he slammed into the base of the building. Bam! Rumble! The shockwave echoed through the district as the skyscraper crumbled almost instantly under the force of the impact. The building's collapse kicked up a massive dust cloud, debris scattering like confetti. Clearly, these suits weren't just for show. They were the real deal. Heh, no wonder, Hammerhead sneered, watching the destruction unfold with an almost childlike glee. These new combat suits from that underground organization are absolute monsters. Risking our lives to steal them? Totally worth it. But moments later, one of the underlings tapped him on the shoulder and pointed down the street. Boss? That wasn't Zenairu's mansion. Hammerhead blinked and stared down the road. Sure enough, the real Zenairu estate, massive, gleaming, and twice as extravagant, stood further up the block. TCH, whatever. They shrugged it off without a second thought and marched forward. Property damage was property damage. The message was still clear. Meanwhile, Zenairu, the wealthiest man in the city, was watching the live news feed in his luxurious penthouse. A bead of sweat rolled down his temple as his servants urged him to evacuate. Sir, I strongly recommend. Before the butler could finish, a tall figure appeared beside the window without a sound. You should count yourself lucky this happened right as our contract ends, the man said coolly. He stood with arms folded, dressed in a sleek ninja-style outfit. His long black hair was tied behind him, and a slim blade rested across his back. Oh! Sonic! Zenairu's face lit up in instant recognition. You're still here? His relief was obvious, but it didn't last. But the enemy is a B-class criminal with a whole gang of lunatics, he added, nervous again. Can you really handle them all alone? Sonic didn't even flinch. So what? You should be more worried about how to clean up the pile of corpses afterward. His voice was calm, almost bored. But behind his eyes, there was a spark of something deadly. A gang of bald weirdos in stolen tech suits? With a criminal leader? He cracked his neck lightly. Yeah, this could be a decent warm-up. Elsewhere in the city, Saitama had just finished a few rounds of video games with Shinji. He sat on the floor, sipping a juice box, when a news alert flashed on the TV. The Paradisers continue to rampage through City-Wide's commercial district. These violent criminals are all bald and wearing identical combat suits. If you see any bald individuals, please exercise caution and report to the authorities immediately. Saitama froze mid-sip. His eyes twitched. The hell did you just say? The camera zoomed in on a shot of Hammerhead's gang stomping down a street. All bald. All loud. All obnoxious. Why the hell are they bald? He pointed at the screen in disbelief. Are they trying to make bald people look bad now? His face was a mix of irritation and offense. He was bald. Proudly bald. This was personal now. They're about to give bald guys everywhere a bad name. And Saitama wasn't going to let that slide. Shit is about to get real. Then you better go shut them down quick, Shinji said lazily from the couch. Exactly. I'll go beat them up right now. Saitama didn't even hesitate. He jumped up, dashed into his room, and threw on his yellow hero suit like it was a fire drill. Seconds later, he was already out the door and bolting toward the city. Shinji, on the other hand, stayed right where he was. No way he was getting involved in something that trivial. Those bald clowns weren't even worth Saitama's warm-up. Plus, there was another reason to avoid that scene. Speedo Sound Sonic. That guy had a seriously annoying personality. The second someone beat him, he'd latch onto them like a flea with a grudge and never let go. Shinji had no interest in getting added to that list. Meanwhile, Hammerhead and the rest of the Paradisers had reached a forested patch of land. Just beyond it loomed their destination, Zenairu's ridiculous, gold-plated skyscraper, more commonly known by its unofficial nickname, the Golden Poop Tower. They were almost there. Almost. Unfortunately for them, Sonic intercepted them right at the edge of the trees. He tore through the Paradisers like a knife through tofu. Even with their fancy combat suits, they couldn't handle his speed. One by one, they collapsed before they could even react. Limbs flying, metal sparking, bodies slamming into trees. Only Hammerhead somehow survived. Barely. He stumbled out of the wreckage, battered and limping, only to run right into a bald figure standing casually in his path. Ah, wait, don't hit. Boom! Too late. Saitama's casual punch shattered Hammerhead's combat suit like it was made of paper. The guy went flying. And then, just as Saitama dusted his hands and turned to leave, Sonic arrived. He took one look at Saitama's bald head. Paused. And immediately assumed he was one of the Paradisers. You, he said darkly. So you're their leader? Saitama blinked. Huh. Cue the awkward misunderstanding. Followed by a ridiculous, over-the-top duel with Sonic flipping through the air like an anime gymnast while Saitama tried to ask what the hell was going on. It didn't end well for Sonic. Back at home, Shinji went back to quietly farming points as usual. Small tasks, low-risk cleanups, things he could handle without getting swarmed by headlines or nonsense. Then, a few days later, something unexpected popped up. Alert! The host's total accumulated points have reached 1,000. Points shop upgraded to level 2. Shinji's eyes widened with interest. He immediately opened the system interface and switched to the points shop. The first page looked exactly the same, nothing new there. But at the bottom corner, a glowing tab had appeared, labeled, Page 2. He focused his thoughts, and the second page unfolded before him. Points shop level 2. 1 tiger mask, Red Knight Obito. 2 3 Tomo Sharingan. 3 Uchiha Clan Fan. 4 Rinnegan. Shinji's pupils narrowed slightly. Now this was an upgrade. Chapter 50, Monster Association. Item details: red tiger striped mask worn by Obito on the night of the Uchiha massacre. No special effects, but extremely durable. Cost, 1 point. The first item didn't seem particularly impressive. Just an ordinary mask. Shinji quickly moved on to the next few listings. Item details: a 3 Tomo Sharingan. Can be used as a backup eye or as a one-time consumable for Izanagi or Izanami. Cost, 200 points. Item details: Flame Fan, also known as the Uchiha Fan. Forged from a piece of the Divine Tree. It can absorb attacks within its endurance limit and convert them into storm energy to rebound at the enemy. Cost, 200 points. Item details: one of Uchiha Madara's Rinnegan eyes. With only one, you can use basic Rinnegan techniques. Collect both to unlock Madara's exclusive ocular powers. Cost, 1,000 points. He scanned through the descriptions. No doubt, all three had great potential. But none of them were necessities at the moment, and the prices were steep. Right now, it wasn't worth blowing that many points on a Sharingan or the Uchiha Fan. And the Rinnegan? Way out of reach for now. Soon after, someone knocked on the door. Knock, knock, knock. Shinji opened it to see Vaccine Man standing in the hallway. I was wandering around just now when some guy claiming to be from the Monster Association approached me. Said he was one of their elites and invited me to join. What even is this Monster Association supposed to be? He looked at Shinji, clearly expecting an explanation. Monster Association, huh? Shinji paused, his mind already working. They were already targeting Vaccine Man? That could only mean they'd taken notice of his power. And it made sense. Vaccine Man was easily on par with, if not stronger than, one of the Monster Association's executive-level monsters, Gale Wind. Shinji weighed his options. Should he tell Vaccine Man to reject the offer outright? Or should he go along and check the place out himself? Didn't take long to make a decision. He'd run into the Monster Association sooner or later anyway. Might as well use this as a chance to scout them out early. That kind of intel could be reported to the Hero Association, and it'd definitely count as a contribution. He was currently ranked 5th in A class. To move up into the S class, he'd need more than just skill. He needed some big accomplishments. Otherwise, with people like the 3 disciples of Atomic Samurai, or Sweet Mask, standing in the way, it'd be almost impossible. Their influence in the Hero Association was just too deep-rooted. No way they'd let an outsider like him rise without a fight. I'll go with you. Where's the guy who invited you? Shinji asked straight out. He already left. Said he'd be back tomorrow and told me to think it over until then, Vaccine Man replied. Then we wait for him to show up tomorrow, Shinji said with a nod. Right after that, he opened the points shop again. Alert! Host has redeemed, Tiger Mask X1. 1 point deducted. Remaining points, 215. A red tiger striped mask appeared in Shinji's hand the moment he confirmed the purchase. He turned it over a few times, tapping it lightly. As expected, the thing was solid, sturdy enough that it wouldn't break unless he really tried. And even then, it only cost 1 point. Barely anything. He slid the mask onto his face. Oddly enough, despite having only one eye hole, his field of vision didn't suffer. His uncovered eye could still see just fine, and his eye abilities were unaffected too. Not bad at all, Shinji nodded, clearly pleased. That mask of yours actually looks kinda cool. Vaccine Man threw a glance his way, tone unusually casual. Didn't think you had any fashion sense. Or are you just being polite for once? Shinji replied with a smirk, caught off guard by the rare comment. No, that's just my honest opinion. Vaccine Man answered plainly. Of course, Shinji had no plans to walk around wearing it all the time. The only reason he got it was for infiltration. He needed something to hide his identity when sneaking into the Monster Association. If he wanted to scout the place and collect intel, he couldn't risk being recognized. Any halfway competent monster could pull up the Hero Association's database and match his face in seconds. He'd be exposed before setting foot inside. After confirming everything was in order, he stored the mask back into the system's inventory. It vanished from his face instantly. The next day, Vaccine Man led Shinji to the location where he was supposed to meet the mysterious monster from the day before. "They're here." Shinji looked up at the sound of rushing air. A winged silhouette was descending toward them, bird-like, with flames trailing behind it. It looked like a phoenix. As it got closer, the shape became clearer. It was Phoenix Man, a demon-level monster, wearing his usual outlandishly absurd dumb bird costume. "Yeah, that's him. Looks like a goofy-ass bird, doesn't he?" Vaccine Man muttered with a slight shrug. Phoenix Man landed smoothly in front of them, wings folding behind his back with a fiery rustle. "You've made your decision?" "And who's this?" he asked, narrowing his eyes at Shinji. "He's my boss," Vaccine Man said flatly. "A monster far stronger than I am. He's interested in your Monster Association, so he came along." It was exactly what Shinji had instructed him to say. Every word had been rehearsed. At the moment, Shinji wore the red tiger-striped mask, concealing his identity. That was all he needed, just enough mystery to get invited inside. Once he was in, his real plan could begin. Whether or not they eventually figured out he was human didn't concern him. Frankly, no one inside the Monster Association was capable of stopping him anyway. "Is that so?" "Fine by me." Phoenix Man nodded without the slightest suspicion. He didn't press Vaccine Man for details. From his perspective, recruiting a more powerful ally only made him look better. More monsters meant more strength for the association, and more prestige for the one who brought them in. Without delay, Phoenix Man turned and led them into the heart of the Monster Association's base. Not just into some common area either, he brought them straight to Gyaro, the dragon-level monster that served as the strategist and mastermind behind the entire organization. Once there, Phoenix Man stepped back without a word, leaving the rest to play out. Gyaro wasted no time. "I only invited him." "Who the hell are you?" the grotesque creature growled, its many veins pulsing beneath translucent flesh. "You reek of human energy. You're no monster. How dare you walk into the Monster Association's territory?" Shinji didn't answer. He didn't even look particularly bothered. Instead, he calmly took out his phone and began snapping a few discreet photos of the interior, hallways, architecture, strategic layouts. Enough to serve as solid intel for the Hero Association. With the evidence gathered, there was no reason to stick around. He was planning to leave right away, with Vaccine Man in tow. But before he could take a step, the pattern of the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan lit up in his eye, visible beneath the mask's single slit. Gyaro's massive eye widened in sudden alarm. "You're Shinji?" At that exact moment, 1,500 meters beneath the surface, the real Gyaro, Psychos, sat in her hidden chamber. As the realization struck her through the mental link, her fingers clenched reflexively. The wine glass in her hand shattered. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in part 3. Peace.